Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 406 of the news, and hopefully we have smooth sailing tonight.
And of course, smooth sailing for our little elite spring army and its stream tonight as we cover the day 406 news, the final day of news for this week of the war. Tomorrow we'll start a brand new week from day 0 of this war on February 23rd over Heroes February 24th of the war in Ukraine. And of course, this week ended on an incredible high note. We've seen things in Russia that, quite frankly, and I've said this so many times, and the Russians just keep on upping themselves, we've never seen stuff like this before. From Putin literally saying, please clap, to the Ministry of Defense on fire. There's been a load that's happened in Russia today, and of course, many of y'all know that we usually cover the Russian news first, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing tonight. Starting off with what's in the title and the thumbnail, the Russian Ministry of Defense caught on fire today. This is something pretty wild to a lot of us and very bizarre, as the Ministry of Defense building not too long ago, it was just a few months ago as a matter of fact, had an entire Pantsir S-1 anti-aircraft system lifted up onto the roof and placed on it for air defense protection purposes. Apparently, no matter how much the Russians try to protect their own buildings, even inside of the city of Moscow, they are still susceptible to attacks like the one we saw here in this video, where an upper floor, it looks like the top floor of the Ministry of Defense building was on fire, and here's the clip. We see right there a police car already on the scene, and it appears that the very top floor, about this row of windows, appears to be on fire, and the smoke is billowing out of one of those windows. Who would have ever thought, Matthew, that Lucky Strikes would make it all the way into the Ministry of Defense?
Oh, yeah, of course. They're going to smoke inside. But, you know, seriously, though, I heard it was a kettle that apparently overflowed or caught on fire or something, and that's what caused it. But I'm no expert on fires, but it doesn't seem like something very small.
It doesn't seem like something very small, but fires do spread, and that seems... real quick, I have to say this, though. We always don't mean to discredit the stories that come from Russia, but a kettle catching on fire in the Ministry of Defense seems kind of a little odd, considering that we never saw this really happen before the war, and there's no real instances of the MOD catching on fire before this. That does seem like a weird story. It's the one that is out there right now and circling around, but who knows what kind of damage this really caused. It may have been contained within just a few rooms, like we're seeing here, or it may have spread even further beyond this video. Nonetheless, the top floor has sustained some decent fire damage, and most likely will require some considerable refitting, reconstruction, and repairs to try and get rid of the fire damage. Moving on from that, we also saw Vladimir Putin in Moscow today, meeting with some of the ambassadors of the Russian Federation and giving them a little bit of a talk. At the end of this talk, he sat there and waited for the clapping, and the clapping never came. And he said something along the lines of the Russian equivalent of, please clap. And so here's the video. It's hilarious. You can see where the speech ended, and he's completely blown away that nobody's clapping. So here's the clip. So here he's giving a speech. And that's the end of the speech. He's looking around. No applause. None at all. And real quick, we can actually see that the speech did end, because once the speeches from Putin end, the guards go and open up the doors. It's a given thing. Every single time his speech ends, the door immediately opens, the room erupts with applause, and he turns around and he walks out while the applause is still going. That is the normal tradition of Putin giving a speech, and these ambassadors sat there like a brick wall, and he sat there, and you can watch, look how surprised he is. He actually sits there and starts like trying to cue them to like applaud, like, you know, someone else who said, please clap.
К сожалению, церемония у нас заканчивается, потому что санитарные ограничения до сих пор действуют. Нам не удастся с вами поговорить лично, но в ходе вашей работы, уверен, такая возможность еще неоднократно представится. Всего вам самого доброго. Благодарю вас.
And they're still not clapping, and he's sitting there like, look, he even went to the side of the podium to quickly bow real quick, like, please give me applause. Look at him. And they still don't give him applause. And then he just finally
Some
walks
say
off.
that Putin's middle name is Jeb Bliat.
Oh no. And also on top of that, I like how immediately after he gives the speech, I've never really seen what's in that back room before because the cameras usually are zoomed in on Putin, so everything else is out of focus. But that's a throne room, like a full-on throne room in that thing. That was redone. There's no way in hell that survived during the Soviet Union the way it is right there. The Soviets would have torn that thing down and made it like a throne of the people or something. That means, I've never seen this before either, that Putin at some point in Russia's modern history paid to have that room reconstructed to the original throne room that you would have seen during the Romanov dynasty of the Russian Empire. If that does not confirm to y'all that this guy believes he's the new emperor of the Russian Empire, I don't know what would, or the czar of the Russian Empire is a better way to say it, because it's literally a rebuilt throne room that he's running into. But I still like, but moving on from that side note, I still like how none of the ambassadors clapped, and he took that terribly. You could tell he was begging for people to clap. And really, that's kind of sad when you think about it. Like, this guy always wants to act like he's, you know, in charge, he's in power. You know, he's, according to Russia, he is the man. Like, he is the definition of their kind of guy. And you watch him here, and he gets no feedback whatsoever. And instead of just being confident in himself, like, I'm the leader of Russia, he's got to sit there and go, please clap. I'll go on a little bit further to make sure to cue him in to clap. They still don't clap, and then he goes to the side of the podium, does a quick little bow, like, please clap. If you give this guy no attention,
that tells you how like surrounded he is by yes men. This one little incident right here of these guys not clapping has like thrown him off so bad. He got uncomfortable, started like shaking in his voice, and just wanted to walk off.
Yeah, I mean, like, if they didn't applaud, I would have just said, thank you for your time, and turn around and left. I mean, there's a lot of instances in the European Union where people give speeches, and in NATO, where there is no applause, most likely because they're listening to the translator and they're trying to understand, or, you know, it's a certain kind of setting. Just treat it like that. If you get no applause, just turn around and walk off. Don't acknowledge that. Just keep going. This guy sat there and acknowledged it 3 times. What a, like, that is the definition of narcissism right there, when you act like you're owed clapping. Before you know it, you'll be doing a Stalin kind of move where you have to keep clapping until you pass out and drop to the floor or something. Like, he'll move to that here soon. But that's all the news we had from Russia today, at least as far as I can, yes, I'm correct. That's as far as I can recall. And we're now going to be moving on over into Belgium, because while there was some big news and no one clapped for Putin today, there was also some really big news, as in the NATO Secretary Stoltenberg came out and announced that the NATO's plan, the NATO alliance's plan, is to get Ukraine into NATO. That is still their plan. And it was very interesting to hear that, because we've heard some waffling in the past before. That's not the video. What the? Oh my god! It didn't get the video. Oh no. Sorry about that. That's a duplicate for some reason. The link that I copied and pasted into that was Stoltenberg saying our goal is to still get Ukraine in NATO, but it appears that it copied the Nona getting blown up around Klishkivka and put it right there. So unfortunately, I don't have that clip. Sorry about that, everyone. So we're going to be moving on from Belgium and on into the United States, because the support package that's worth $2.6 billion was just announced yesterday. And we actually got a breakdown in the spreadsheet of what this $2.6 billion includes. So now we actually know what it is. So let's go to this real quick, and I'll show you all the numbers. So, 1,500 javelins. Now, I don't really know if that means 1,500 CLUs or 1,500 javelin missiles. I'm assuming that means CLUs at the moment, but we'll try and change that when we can. 300 TOW launchers. We know that those are certainly the TOW launchers. Very interesting thing to hear. There was actually a lot of TOW launchers given to Ukrainians back in 2018. And so it appears that they're now bolstering the TOW numbers fairly well. TOWs are pretty effective, very effective against the current Soviet-era armor that we're seeing being used on the battlefield, the older vintages from the 50s and 60s. So these things should be incredibly effective, as well as the javelins. They're also sending 39 mortars. A very small number of mortars. We don't know what kind either. There wasn't an exact breakdown of the kind, whether they're heavy mortars, light mortars. We didn't get any definition there, but they are getting 39 mortars. They're also getting 500 precision-guided rounds. So I'm assuming that that means they're Excalibur rounds, the M982 variant. We also see that they're getting 2,000 anti-armor mine systems. So That's a fairly interesting. That pretty much means like an anti-tank mine for the most part. They're getting 260,000 artillery rounds. Based off of the numbers we went over the other day, that's not actually that high of a number compared to the World War I figure. In World War I, 260 rounds would have lasted one of the armies about 6 hours of time, and then they would have run out of ammunition, at least according to the averages that we went and broke down the other day. They're also getting 20,000 grad rockets. That is quite a sizable number because a single, and let's just say it's a BM-21 grad, and let me go there, and let's see how many rockets a BM-21 grad carries, just to make sure. Let's see, mass, barrel length, 3 meters, width, height, crew. Let's see here. Let's just count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 40 missiles per grad, per BM-21 grad. So if we divide that 20,000 number down by 40, let's figure out how many grads that will load. So 20,000 divided by 40, 500. So that will give the Ukrainian MLRS batteries about 500 reloads worth of grad rockets right there, which is actually a pretty decent number, but it probably won't last them too long, really. We also saw that 300,000 autocannon ammunition was being delivered to him. Once again, unknown what kind of calibers. We don't know if they're the 25mm kind for the Bradleys that'll be coming into the war soon, or if they're 30mm rounds for the 2 A42 guns on the BMPs. We also saw 25 million rounds of small arms ammunition being sent over. That's actually a pretty decent number. We saw 18 tactical vehicles to recover equipment, so recovery vehicles. We also saw 6 armored bridging systems being sent, 69 heavy fuel tankers and 105 fuel trailers, 4 logistics support vehicles, 16 trucks and 20 trailers, and then an additional 5,000 grenade launchers. We think those are the M320 variants, but we're still not exactly certain. But there is the breakdown of what $2.6 billion of equipment is worth, at least from the list we're getting right here, which it's not really.
That might be one of the best packages they've gotten in a while, actually. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really interesting how much autocannon, well, really just ammunition in total that they're getting. It's a really big amount of it. But one thing that I did find interesting is that they're only getting 4 supply trucks in this package, only 4 of them. I don't know what kind they are, how big they are, but only 4? I mean, like, logistics trucks aren't that expensive. I think they're, like, on an average of around $40,000 to $50,000 a piece. At least the ones I'm thinking of, like an M35, which I know we probably have probably hordes and thousands of those that are still in storage here in America that could be sent over like the M113s, but only 4 of them. That is a little weird, but the rest of it's actually really nice. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, the supply package that was given to Ukraine, and we're now going to be moving on out of the United States and on into Ukraine itself. And we have a pretty decent amount of news, of course, to cover in Ukraine today. Starting off in the western area of the country, where we saw a really cool picture today that I felt like I had to share with y'all because it was just that good. This is a Ukrainian MiG-29, something that many of y'all are familiar with at this point as the famous Ghost of Kyiv, which actually didn't exist. Of course, that's been known forever, but whenever I say that, I have to say...
Don't spoil it. It's like saying Santa Claus doesn't exist.
Yeah, but, well, not really. I mean, you know, everyone pretty much knows the Ghost of Kyiv doesn't exist. It was just a legend come up with by a War Thunder YouTuber, apparently, and then it spread like wildfire, and then people believed it. But here's a picture of 2 Ukrainian pilots standing in front of a MiG-29. We don't know if the MiG-29 was a Polish or a Slovakian MiG-29 that was sent to Ukraine. But it is a nice MiG-29 nonetheless, and also really cool to see the pilots posing for a picture in the middle of the war. Hopefully they have some safe skies ahead of them. Hopefully they don't run into anything difficult or anything a little that the MiG-29 can't handle. But of course, a really cool picture. I liked it a lot, and I thought I'd just show it to y'all for that reason. We're now going to be moving on from the western area of Ukraine and on over into the border region. We're not getting to the location unknowns just yet. There was a little bit of news that happened near the Kharkiv Oblast, and for the first time ever, we saw a Ukrainian artillery barrage actually hit across the border. This is one of the first times we've seen Ukrainian raids cross the border with a small squad of Ukrainian soldiers. We've never seen them barrage Russian forces on the other side of the border. From what we were told, this was a kilometer and a half away from the Ukrainian border near the small village of Sapovka, and it appears that they were able to hit a couple of armored vehicles and maybe knock them out on the other side of the border. Here's the clip. And we can see right there the first round already hits. It appears that they're hitting the vehicles one by one. We can see that they hit one of the APCs, or armored vehicles. And we can see the rest of the rounds landing in the tree line. We can't really tell if there are any vehicles in the tree line to confirm whether they're destroyed, but we do know that at least one armored personnel carrier was damaged or destroyed during this barrage. And it is the first instance where we've ever seen an artillery barrage from the Ukrainian forces landing on the other side of the Russian border. We've seen missile barrages on Belgorod's, I guess you could say military infrastructure and power infrastructure as well. We've seen attacks on Russian air bases with missiles, of course, but we've never seen a full-on artillery attack from an actual towed artillery piece, or just an artillery piece for that matter, that has hit Russians inside of Russia. So this is the first recorded instance of that, and fairly nice to see, really, and hopefully they continue to pound Russian forces wherever they are along the Ukrainian border if they're getting a little too close. And so with that, we're now...
And how far into Russia was it that they struck? 1.3 kilometers?
1.3 kilometers, so about a mile.
So it couldn't have been an accident. It was intentional that they struck inside the border?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, look at the armored vehicle cluster here, and all of the rounds fell just around the armored vehicle cluster, so they were certainly aiming for these guys across the border.
Interesting. Well, I guess they did good work.
Yeah, they did good work. And anyways, I don't know, of course we say that the Ukrainians don't want to extend this war and escalate it, but, it is a war after all, and if enemy forces are near your border, that close, within a mile of your border, I would assume that you would take action to destroy them, although the war isn't supposed to extend beyond your borders. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, just a mile inside of Russia, and now on into the Kharkiv area as a whole. Many people know that Kharkiv was once a major battleground. In fact, the second largest at the start of the war, next to the Battle of Kiev, which was also the largest battle in the war at that moment. As we know, many rounds, many rockets, many artillery shells. I'm trying to figure out how to word that. I sounded like a caveman there. But a whole bunch of ammunition was used against the city of Kharkiv of all kinds. And the Russians, of course, during their retreat, as the Ukrainians started to push them away from the city of Kharkiv, started to lay down massive amounts of mines. And also there was a load of unexploded ordnance still lying around. And Ukrainian sappers from the 121st Brigade of the TDF are still out there around the Kharkiv city area in the Kharkiv Oblast, making sure to try and find all of the explosives they can and defuse them and collect them. We see right here near a destroyed Ukrainian car a load of mines that they were able to find that they're stacking up near the area. They're most likely going to take these behind the lines, either to defuse and use later, or to destroy. We're not exactly sure. We can also see a larger grad rocket. It appears that this one may have been from an Uragan that landed in the side of a berm and never exploded, and it's just been sitting here for a year at this point, and they're finally getting the thing out of the ground. And in the last picture, we can of course see another load of mines, once again poorly disguised on the ground, not really covered with anything, and it appears that the Ukrainians are out there either getting ready to detonate them remotely, or they're going to defuse them and remove them from the field. The sappers' work is a work of true art, in a way. Sappers have to be very careful, and of course these mines, you don't really have to be careful around, you can physically see them. But mines that are actually hidden under the ground are incredibly dangerous, not just to the sappers, but the citizens as well, and these sappers undertake a very dangerous and unsung job to try and make the fields and lands of Ukraine as safe as they were before the war, and I've got to give these guys a load of credit, because when you really think about it, these guys mess with bombs that could kill them at any given instant if they do one single thing wrong. And that is really something when you think about the courage that these guys have. Of course, they're not getting shot or shelled, but it still takes a lot of courage to look down at a bomb that could blow up and kill you. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from the Kharkiv Oblast news. Of course, I've got to give a huge credit to the sappers. I don't know if we have any Ukrainian sappers watching this channel. We do have some Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines that watch this channel. Sappers, I don't really know about. If you are a sapper and you are watching this channel, y'all are doing an amazing job out there. And while y'all don't get a lot of coverage by really anyone on mainstream news or even on YouTube, I would like to take the moment to thank y'all for saving as many citizens as y'all probably have by getting these things up and out of the fields. And so with that, we're now moving out of the area of Kharkiv and on into the area of the location unknowns. And of course, the last day of the location unknowns. Starting off with our first little clip, a fairly interesting one where we saw a large column of MRAPs. MRAPs have been in Ukraine for quite some while, and as the war has continued to progress, the Ukrainians have gotten a larger number of these things. We're going to mute the guy playing the harmonica But we can see here a load of them. I mean, a literal endless supply of them. And also, it seems as though, for a second, I actually thought that was one of those large Oshkosh fuel trucks right there. It appears to be a Ukrainian one, some kind of a Soviet or Ukrainian-built supply truck right there, along with a bus and a car. But this is a massive column of MRAPs, and we can see that all of them had some very storied lives. We can see some of them were most likely used in Europe, as they have the NATO tricolor camo on them, and then we can see a lot of them in the desert tan color that most American military vehicles are known by at this point, that probably were slated to either go to the Middle East or Central Asia at some point, or never ended up going there and just sat in the supply yards. Still very interesting to see. It's great to know that so many armored vehicles have been handed over to the Ukrainian armed forces that will protect them from the mines that the sappers are out there trying to get up out of the ground. These things will certainly protect a crew from one of those, although the vehicle may not survive, the crew certainly will. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit, where we also saw an Avenger in Ukraine. No, we're not talking about Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, or the Incredible Hulk. No, I don't even really watch those movies. I think I watched one in like 2014, and I never watched another one since. I know that people are going to be like, "Why you don't watch the Avengers?" Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really into movies much, but we did see a real Avenger in Ukraine, which is an M1097. This is a Humvee that has a turret with 8 Stinger man-pads inside of the turret. You can see 4 of them here in this cell and 4 of them in the other cell. We can see this thing driving through the sludge. And you see how difficult it is.
Cinematic slow-mo, nothing like it.
We need some of that country music and a Sam Elliott voice narrating this thing. Wait a minute, it has machine guns too? I didn't know Wow, I just learned something new. I didn't know that these things had 50 caliber machine guns on them. It has 2 of them. And then, of course, the 8 Stingers. We can now see
Man, that's tight inside that cab.
Yeah, I know. They packed in a lot of equipment inside of that thing, and we can see a guy in the turret. And he's talking about his job. And it appears that they're now setting up the Avenger for operation. And now explaining how it works. But a really interesting video. I'm a big fan of these little M109 Avengers. I believe they're just called M109. No, they are M109-7s. But these things are incredibly neat. They don't really get talked about a lot because, in reality, it's neat, but it isn't that impressive. It is just some man-pads, Stingers that are mounted into some turrets. And we can also see this one here. I knew I wasn't crazy because almost every single picture I've ever looked at of these Avengers, they've never had machine guns. I guess that one may be an exception to the norm, or maybe that is the norm and all of these pictures are the exception. I'm not really sure. This one does have the machine guns. And this one also looks like it was somewhere in Iraq, like in the early 2000s or maybe even the 90s based off of how these guys look. And is that an M14? That's a rabbit hole for another time. Anyways, these things are really neat, really interesting to me, and I like the idea. The United States never really developed any massive surface-to-air missile defense systems. And of course, the only exception to that is the Patriot defense system. Beyond that, we largely relied on the Air Force to protect the ground troops, and we also really didn't have anything else in between. It was either the Air Force would stop the air threats, or it wouldn't be anything. And these things were just kind of a stopgap, just in case the Air Force couldn't get to whatever the air target was in time. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news. Still great to see that the Ukrainians have them, though. And we're moving on into the next bit, where we saw a C-60 firing at the Russians. As many of y'all know, the Ukrainians and the Russians, at this point, have gotten into using incredibly old weapons. The C-60 is about 70 years old at this point, introduced into Soviet service during 1950, and it has stayed in service with the Soviet Union up until, I believe, the late 1970s, early 1980s. It was taken out of service, and now, of course, due to the Ukrainians needing every weapon they could have, they brought out the C-60s again, and then a little bit later on in the war, once the Russians got beat down heavily, they started to pull out the C-60s as well. So we can see the Ukrainians using one of theirs right here on the back of a, it's not a Euro 4320, I think that's actually a gas, but anyways, here's the video. It looks like they're using it in some form of indirect fire, just lobbing the shells in from miles away. And of course, a very short clip. And it's really cool to see these things in operation. It's really bizarre when you think about it that 80 years, well, 70, 80 years after the Second World War ended, we're still seeing almost World War II era weapons, sometimes older than the Second World War, like the Maxim, still being used, not just by Ukraine, but also by Russia, which is hilarious considering that supposedly they were the second best army in the world, and now look at them. They're using Maxim guns. Pitiful. So, with that...
That's really laughable to think we really thought they were the second strongest. Like, they had us fooled.
Yeah, they really did have us fooled. Now, one thing that everyone, that pro-Russians, not really everyone, but pro-Russians always try and laugh at is the Ukrainians using old military tech. Nobody before this war ever said that the Ukrainians were a top-notch military with high-tech weaponry. The Russians said that before the war. The Ukrainians just had a military. Nobody really talked about it a lot. It wasn't one of the world's finest, one of the world's most advanced. So when they start pulling out stuff like Maxims, DP-28s, C-60s, and older artillery pieces and things like that, it isn't really that crazy to think of, because it's like, well, yeah, the Ukrainians are getting invaded by a country that is supposedly way more powerful than them. Obviously, they would be pulling stuff out of pretty much museums, but when the Russians start doing it, that's when it's a joke, because they were supposed to be the unstoppable army. They were supposed to be able to take on the United States and give them a run for their money, and they're getting beat by the Ukrainians who've been using things like this since the start of the war, largely because the Russians are incredibly incompetent and also because they lied to everyone for so long. We're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into the next one, where we also saw an M240 mortar in service. This thing is wild. I've never heard of an M240 mortar until today. I'd heard of an M240 machine gun, never an M240 240mm heavy mortar. This thing literally looks like a giant tube that they just shot a shell out of, but here's the video. Here they go, and they're firing it. God!
Jeez.
Good God!
Man, their ears are done.
Their ears are cooked, man. And we need to find this thing. The M240 mortar. Let's see here. Good God, this thing's huge. So it's a Soviet mortar. So it's pretty much the Chilpan's mortar. But it's not on a Chilpan. It's actually towed around, and then they drop down the base plate, thing lifts up, and they adjust the aim and fire it and all that stuff. So it is Soviet. But this thing is insane. I mean, and there's the Chilpan, which just carries the mortar around on its back. This is based off of a 2S1 SPG. They took the turret off, kept the hull, and just mounted a mortar on top of it. But this thing is... These mortars are wild. I mean, the size of these things are unbelievable. A 240mm gun... 240 millimeters compared to inches, is what? A 9.4 inch gun. So this thing is larger than, in diameter of the barrel, than most of the main guns you would find on cruisers in the Second World War in the U.S. Navy. I mean, the caliber of these things is unbelievably large. And of course, these are heavy mortars, so they would be getting into that category, but it's still crazy to think that these things have that kind of firepower, and I think they can only shoot, and let me make sure I'm correct with this. You can only fire 1 round a minute, so it's not going to be a high rate of fire, but it does have a maximum firing range of about 10 kilometers or around 8 miles. So really just an impressive mortar system, even though it's old. Thing's massive, and it's lobbing almost a heavy cruiser-sized shell at a target that's almost 8 miles away. And so with that...
And I was just about to say that it looked like, to me, that the shells would probably be heavy as hell for that thing. It looked like they were 300 pounds apiece.
Oh yeah, the crew cannot manually load those shells. I believe it requires some kind of a mechanical process, like a crane, to load those things in. And I think the crane's either built into the supply vehicles that help those mortars to operate, or something else. But I mean, like, it's unbelievable to think of the logistics of even trying to fire that thing with a shell that big and a mortar that large. And so with that, we're now moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we saw a couple of Ukrainians that were really lucky. Now, y'all are about to watch some Ukrainians nearly get blown away. This grad rocket's going to fly right into the ground in front of them, slam into it, and of course, it's a dud. I know that a lot of y'all probably aren't even surprised by that, but here's the clip, and it's really hilarious to just see this thing fly into the ground, and you hear thump, and it just doesn't blow up. So here's the clip. I mean, you see the Ukrainian soldiers looking outside, and there's the rocket, and they go running inside, and then they look back outside. And you can see the rocket just right there. The tail broke off, and it didn't blow up. And these
Let's
guys...
see that first part again.
Here we go again.
Jeez, man, that was close.
They were so lucky. I mean, you can laugh at it because no one was hurt or anything. It was a dud, but dang, imagine how scared they must have been for a second. And how relieving it was when they found out the thing wasn't going to blow up. Really lucky guys right here, because that thing that close, that thing would have flung shrapnel at those guys at that house and probably ended up wounding and killing a lot of them. And so they're very lucky that the Russians are pulling out ammunition that's nearly 50 and 60 years old that hardly works. Otherwise, that thing would have blown up. But man, to have this kind of luck filmed, they need to go get some lottery tickets. Just look at this.
Seriously.
Good God, that would scare the hell out of me, really.
I like the only thing they can do is like kind of laugh like goobers after that because they're so freaked out by it.
Dude, man, I think at that point I would just have to laugh too, because
Hell yeah.
imagine their chances, man. I mean, like, out of all of the times that a rocket could have been a dud, it was that one right there on top of them. They were very lucky. Yeah, I can't even say how the odds are that they're that lucky to have that one not explode. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that bit of location unknown news and those Ukrainians who apparently have the largest amount of luck in the world on top of them. And we're now going to be moving into the location. Well, actually not the location. Oh my God, what am I doing tonight? What am I doing? But we're moving into the Russian losses. So here is the Russian losses for the day. Also, Matthew and me were talking about this right before the stream. The Twitter icon's been changed to the Doge dog.
Oh man, I wish they would just keep the bird. I like the bird.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was the biggest bird, now we got the biggest dog. But anyways, moving on into the location unknowns. Of course, everyone repping the set with the Bobcats. Love to see it.
Hey.
Love to see it. And moving on into the losses today, only one Bobcat skid steer or a special equipment vehicle was lost over the past 24 hours. Not an incredibly high number, but once again, it is rare to see these things destroyed, considering that 406 days of the war have passed and only 299 vehicles have been destroyed. Of course, less than one vehicle is being destroyed per day on average, so this is above average. 550
We
Russian...
just need one more Bobcat to hit 300, and then I'll be happy.
and then we'll reach goal, like we do on
Yes.
Sunday morning. But anyways, 550 Russian soldiers have also been wiped out over the past 24 hours. That does not include wounded, and also to answer this as well, we get this question sometimes. We don't really know if that includes the Wagner PMC. We are assuming that these numbers do include the Wagner, but once again, we're not entirely certain or sure. We also saw that 6 armored personnel carriers were destroyed over the past 24 hours, finally catapulting the armored personnel carrier number destroyed over 7,000. They're now at 7,005 armored personnel carriers destroyed over the course of this war. We also saw a very high amount of supply vehicles being destroyed today, with a total of 11 of them meeting their end on the battlefield today. We also saw an additional 2 tanks destroyed, not an incredibly high number, but it is good to know that the Russians are consistently losing armored vehicles day by day, although the numbers are fluctuating heavily at this point. That may be because they're having to pull in more tanks to support infantry that are in failing assaults, and then those are hit and destroyed in an attempt to save the infantry. But today's numbers were somewhat low in that category, but still nice to see. 10 artillery systems were destroyed. Now, that is not a low number. That's actually getting on up towards the high range. And that means that around 2.5 entire artillery batteries were destroyed. These could be anything from the Tulpan heavy mortar to an 81mm mortar that was made during the Soviet era, or a Mista S. These could be any artillery systems. It shows a towed artillery piece as the infographic over here, but that's not exactly truthful from what we know. It could be really any artillery piece that's being counted here, but an entire 2 batteries and a half of them were destroyed today. We also saw that 6 additional drones were destroyed. We don't really know what kind. They could be Orlans, Shaheds. We haven't heard of any Shahed attacks, so I'm doubting that. They're most likely Orlans or other kinds of frontline Russian drones that have been shot down by man-pads or rifle fire. We also saw that 4 MLRSs were destroyed, an entire Grad battery's worth of MLRSs that were wiped out. And we have a very good idea of what kind of MLRSs they were, because there's only 3 different kinds: the Grad, the Uragan, and the Smerch. If it's not one of those, it doesn't exist. So it was either Grads, Uragans, and Smerches that were destroyed today. It could be a mix of all of them, or it could just be an entire battery of a single variant of MLRS that the Russians used. Nothing else in any other category was destroyed today. We didn't see any planes, helicopters, cruise missiles, anti-aircraft warfare vehicles, or boats destroyed. Not incredibly bizarre to not see anything destroyed in those categories on any given days, But of course, the losses are, I would say, average compared to most of the war today. They're not exceptionally high like the last month has been, but they are good nonetheless. And of course, whittling down Russian forces day by day. We're now going to be moving on from this little bit of location unknown news and on into the frontline news itself, starting in the northeast and moving our way towards Bakhmut and down south. Many of y'all may have noticed today that I actually was able to upload a normal video, and it seems as though many of y'all really enjoyed that video. We'll be trying to do those a little bit more. It's really hard to do them though because there's a lot going on in college, but we will try and make the time. And it looks like so many of y'all enjoyed that thing today, and it wasn't that long. It wasn't really, well, actually it was fairly in depth because I went into a lot more level of depth there than we normally do here, actually. But we'll actually go into that level of depth on stream tonight too. But anyways, I keep on saying but, and we're not getting to the but. We're now moving on into the polls because Matthew has thrown up some really good polls tonight. A lot of y'all have voted on them, and I want to see what y'all are thinking about these polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and our very first poll says, today the Russian Ministry of Defense caught on fire, as we saw earlier in the video, and do you think it's sabotage or an accident? 59%, which is the most popular choice, said sabotage, 17% said accident, 14% said it's Russia trying to cover up some corruption, and 10% said unsure. And on this one, I would have to lean honestly toward the 14%. I think somebody, whoever it was in that building, maybe had gotten caught in some kind of corruption scheme and they might have set it on fire intentionally to maybe burn some documents or hide some evidence. I really doubt it was sabotage because to get inside of that building in particular, I imagine the security would be very high. So that's unlikely in my mind. And an accident? I don't know. Doesn't seem like a kettle catching on fire would be like a routine accident. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's very interesting, man. You actually used what I said before the stream, because what I said before the stream was I told Matthew I would put money on it that was a Russian officer inside that building that was about to be caught in some kind of corruption because they were going to start auditing his files, and so he caught his office on fire and said it was an accident. That's what I'm kind of leaning more towards the direction of, because I could see that to be fairly reasonable. I couldn't see the case that a saboteur was able to make it into the Ministry of Defense all the way up to the top floor of the building into a specific office and then catch it on fire. I find that to be highly unlikely. If it was on one of the bottom floors, I could see it. On the top floor, not so much. It's very hard to get up there, and there's no buildings in the area where you could just lob something at a window and bust through and then catch something on fire, like with a Molotov or anything. So I'm going to have to be honest, kind of doubting his sabotage. I feel like it was most likely something done by a Russian officer in the building deliberately, either to hide some kind of corruption that he was conducting, or it was maybe an accident. In all seriousness, it may have been an accident, but what a stupid one to have, because you don't really hear in the Pentagon that the microwave caught on fire and burned an office down or something. You know, you don't hear about that much. So with that, and also speaking of which, what is up with that pitiful looking, one second, MOD building in
the mod building.
Let's see, Moscow.
Very traitorous building.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you did there. Ministry of Defense, Moscow of the Russian Federation. There we go. So here we have it. Here's the building, and we'll take a look at the pictures here. This is the entire Russian Ministry of Defense building. It's a massive complex. Thing's absolutely huge. And I just highly doubt that someone was able to get into that building and catch the thing on fire. It's not surrounded by anything, and it has a river in front of it, no way to lob a Molotov up that high, and there's no way you could throw one across the street at that distance and bust through a window and then also catch the thing on fire. So I'm just considering it to be a little unlikely. But, I mean, like, this building, I gotta be honest with you, they didn't really do a lot to change it from Soviet times. I mean, like, hell, it even has the, like, Soviet emblem, the sickle and hammer up there still.
Yeah, it still looks pretty, like, Soviet.
Look, it's an old Soviet. Yeah, I mean, like, it does have the sickle and hammer up there still. I've got to find one that's up close on that thing, because I've got to see if that sickle and hammer... Wow, it really is just still there. I mean, they never...
Although I will have to say, it doesn't match the level of hideousness that the FBI building does in D.C.
Now, that I'll agree on. And also...
I'm not sure if many buildings match that.
Also, I'll say, this thing doesn't seem as formidable as the Pentagon. I mean, like, yeah, it's a big building. It does have that going for it, but it just doesn't evoke. Oh, there's the FSB building actually right across the river. Right there. Actually, it's just literally across. That building's ugly.
Yeah, I would say.
Let's see here. This thing just does not evoke the same feeling that the Pentagon does. You know, the Pentagon's really special. And honestly, I would say the Ministry of Defense building in the United Kingdom is also really unique and special on its own as well. But I don't really think anyone can get close at this moment except for the Egyptians. And, you know, that's a rabbit hole for another time. Nobody can really get close to the size and also how ominous the Pentagon seems. Like, when you see the Pentagon, you're like, oh, that's the Pentagon, you know? Like,
Wait a minute. It's so ominous. They have a Starbucks in the right wing of the building, a Dunkin' in the middle. There's no way that's a Dunkin' in the middle of the courtyard.
let me click on it. Let's see if there's ratings. Like, there's just legit ratings for this thing. 59 reviews. Oh, it's all joke reviews.
Wait,
So,
so what is this person saying in the middle? I had to run past the guards to get a cup of coffee. Well, you might not have been allowed in there then.
waiter, give me a coffee. Instead, the guards are coming. Hey, you
Man, I
stop.
showed up at that building called the Pentagon. I had to run past the guards and dodge bullets to get my coffee.
But man, I mean, like, the Pentagon is really something. And of course, getting back to the whole point of me talking about the Pentagon, Ministry of Defense, all that stuff, there's no way in hell a fire, and of course, the fire's probably broken out in the Pentagon, but not like that. Not the way you saw in the Ministry of Defense. That one seemed on the top floor, most likely in an office, to be most likely deliberate by someone. Who knows what their purpose was, but I'm assuming it was deliberate. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I didn't know there was a Dunkin' in the middle of the Pentagon. And with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and our second poll says, the U.S. says they don't encourage Ukraine to strike inside of Russia, and what are your thoughts? 34%, most popular choice, said that is sound advice. It's better just to fight in Ukraine. 4% said unsure, 29% said I'm mixed on this one, and 33% said that's weak advice and attack at will. And I have to say that I'm a little bit mixed, because poking Russia, even though they are a pretty weak fighting force that we found out after the war started, seems like maybe it might be a little risky, but at the same time, it is satisfying to see Russia actually getting what it deserves for once in their own territory, on their own home turf. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it is a war, and so I don't really see anything wrong. I didn't mean to say it like that, though, Matthew, because that came off really weird. I said it is a war. I was trying to think, where am I taking this? But it is a war, after all, and I don't really see anything wrong with striking in Russia, as long as land forces aren't pushing into Russia and occupying territory. And that's the only line I draw. Attacking Russia with artillery or missiles for that matter, doesn't really seem to be out of the question, because once again, they are at war, and there are risks that come with war, and that is that your opponent that you're fighting may strike into your territory. Of course, in the modern day, only at military targets. If the Ukrainians started to just mass barrage a city like Belgrade, and the citizenry wouldn't really be on board with that, but I'm perfectly fine with them attacking military targets at will, even if they are inside of Russia or way deep inside of Russia, like Saratov and Ryazan were. And so with that, I hope that addresses the poll in my opinion, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll is kind of similar, but a little bit different, because it kind of specifies the reason why Ukraine might be attacking inside of Russia. And the question is attacking inside of Russia a good idea for Ukraine to win the war, in your opinion? 61% said yes, it will help them win, and it's good for them to do that. 8% said unsure. 23% said it's satisfying but unwise. And 8% said no, it's very unnecessary and risky. And on this one, I will say, I think it was Charlie Nickel say a minute ago, that the border hit and runs, those are good. Now, I will say, if it's on the border, probably not a problem with that, because, you know, it's right there on Ukraine's border, and it is a war, like the Enforcer said, so there's some things that are fair game. But I think what the U.S. was specifically saying is it's not wise for Ukraine to send missiles, for example, right into Moscow, because that might cause Russia to ratchet up the pressure a little bit. And after all, we do have to recall that Russia does have nukes. We don't know if they function fully or not, but they do have them nonetheless. So always got to keep that in mind. And also, Ukraine's objective here is to simply win the war and keep their territory. They're not trying to take Russian territory or do anything like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would also agree with you almost on everything there. It is a war, and I find that the border raids are quite a beneficial thing for Ukraine. They do tie up Russian resources along parts of the border where the war really isn't at right now, because the Russians have to be ready for the Ukrainians. One second. Excuse me.
Oh,
That's rarely
Gesundheit.
happened. Gesundheit. But yeah, I consider those fine because it ties up Russian resources. But an actual ground invasion by the Ukrainian army into Russia is not going to result, in my opinion, in anything good. It's going to result in the Russians going in panic mode, and while they'll be pulling out most likely T-62s and T-54s and T-55s, and their forces will be poorly equipped, one thing I can guarantee you is that would definitely embolden the Russian populace to support the war, and it would drag the war on a lot longer. As long as the actual ground fighting keeps within the borders of Ukraine, and Ukraine's entire goal is to reclaim their lost territory from 2014 and the current war, I don't really see much of a problem with that. But pushing on into Russia and trying to invade them, that just does not seem to me to be a wise idea either. So that would be my opinion on that poll. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll, so let's jump right into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a $45 donation from Richard Agur, who says, great call out on the sappers, very much unseen and unsung, and often first in and last out.
And thank you so much for the support, Richard. And I've got to completely agree with you there. They are usually the first guys in. That's why many of y'all may see during Russian and Ukrainian counterattacks or offensives inside of Ukraine that the UR-77 meteorites are brought up first. Those are, of course, run by the sappers as well. A little less hands-on than the normal way of trying to find a mine by hand, but they do launch that massive explosive charge, the massive explosive line into a minefield and then blow it up, and then usually they may even have sappers go forward and try and clear the area again. Back in the Gulf War, the sappers were, of course, the first ones in there as well. There were large minefields laid on the border of Kuwait and Iraq, and so the sappers had to go even forward ahead of the infantry to start clearing a way for the infantry to advance, and the entire time that they were trying to clear these minefields, they were under artillery barrage by the Iraqi forces. It's really something when you think about what sappers have gone through throughout pretty much every single war. In fact, there was a group of, I guess you could say, soldiers way back in the day, somewhere around the 16th and 17th centuries, called a petard or a petardier. And these guys' job was pretty much to be a demolitions man or a sapper. And of course, sappers are kind of demolition men in a way. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe they also diffuse explosives and then also create charges on explosives as well to help the military. But the petardiers would take a massive explosive keg and they would literally just run at a fortification like a castle under fire. They would set the keg down, they would light the thing on fire, and then they'd go running back the entire time under fire, and hopefully the fuse would go off, the charge would explode, and they'd blow a hole through the wall. Sappers have had it tough throughout all of history, and I've got to give them a lot of credit because it's a very dangerous job. Usually they're well paid. They're actually way better paid historically than most other soldiers in the military because it's a very dangerous job. But you've got to give them a lot of credit because to have the courage and bravery to do that each and every day and to face down death like that, literally looking at it on the ground, that is something. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Richard, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope we addressed that fairly well about the sappers because I got a lot of respect for them. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and
Bless, it's
up
spreading.
you one.
It's spreading.
Yes, but anyways, up next, we have a $30 super chat from Blue Flam 777, and thank you very much for that support. And believe it or not, this is not a super chat from Psyops, but this one is going to review because it is interesting. So, Enforcer, check your Discord DM.
I'm going to read it. Actually, I see it. I'm just going to read it because it's
Go
not...
right ahead. Go for it.
Also, May said petard. Sorry, I think I said petardier. 1 second. Let me type that in. Petard. Yep, you're right. It's a petard. And are the guys who handle them a petardier, or are they just a petard? Let's see here. Down door, small bomb. 1 second. 1 second. We got to get to this before we get to blue flams real quick, because I want to make sure to correct this. Let's see. Petard comes from the Middle French peter, which means to fart. So yeah, nice. Anyways, the petardiers were deployed during sieges. So the guys who used the petard were petardiers. So I did get that. I did get the terminology correct. The guys who used the bomb are called petardiers. The petard is the bomb itself. And so with that, I'm sorry, I had to make sure we got that right before we moved on. But moving on to
He's just stalling. He's stalling not to read this one, I can tell you.
But moving on to Blue Flam 777s, he said, how do you catch a bra? with a booby trap. The Q goes to the chat.
Oh no!
LSA and Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much for the support, Blue Flame 777. We read that off, believe it or not. That was almost on the verge of being not read off, but we decided to read it off nonetheless. And so, thank you so much once again for the support. Really good joke, by the way. That's a pretty good one. And we will make sure to send the question to the live chat as well. And thank you once again, Blue Flame, for sponsoring the live chat and being kind enough as well to support this channel and help the thing to keep on rolling. And so with that, let's get the live chat.
All right, and the live chat sponsored by Blue Flame 777 goes to Kella Hella, who says, "Is Ukraine close to deploying A-10 Warthogs?"
Ukraine is, from what we understand, not close to deploying A-10 Warthogs. That appears to be an aircraft that kind of pops up on the list of aircraft that we may possibly send for a little bit, and then we take it off immediately. There is a lot of questions as to the efficacy of an A-10. I'll pull out a big word there, but the efficacy of an A-10 in the modern battlefield, and that appears to also be existing in the Department of Defense circles as well. Many of y'all say that it would do well. I'm kind of on the fence. I believe it will do well under the right conditions. It will not do well under just slightly less than ideal conditions. That's my opinion on it. But from what we understand, they do not have A-10s. There is not even a plan to send them A-10s. They'll probably get F-16s before they ever get the A-10s. And they also are not ready to use them. I think there is some pilots in training here in America on the A-10s, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get them. And I'm sorry about this, but excuse me. And with that, I don't know what it is, man. There's something in the air.
Dankeschön.
Dankeschön. Oh, thank you. But with that, I hope we answered that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news.
All right, and this one goes to Charlie Nickel. He puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Charlie, for the support. He says, "I read that John Deere is all in with the space race and are branching off into satellites." Seems like John Deere's response to the soaring popularity of the Bobcat skid steer. Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, what say you?
Wait,
and I'm shocked I haven't heard that yet. John Deere going into satellite production?
Wait, hang on. Satellite. Well, this was last year. Let's see here. Deere announced it has issued a satellite communications focused request for proposals to secure a cutting edge solution that will further connect its fleet of intelligent machines. Yeah, John Deere with their right to repair thing. I get it.
Yeah, I guess you can't repair your own satellite either. You got to bring it into the John Deere factory for that.
I'm going to be honest with y'all. I understand a little bit why the right to repair thing is there, because it's of all the emission laws and stuff like that. So, it's trying to keep in accordance with the law, but it also seems ridiculous that I believe you can actually be sued by John Deere if you tamper with your own tractor and try and repair it instead of bringing it back to them, because there's the right to repair, if I'm correct.
I'm not really sure. I think it might just be that like businesses like repairmen or mechanics can't do it. But I think you can tinker with it yourself, but you can't find parts because John Deere only sells it to their own dealerships.
Yeah, I don't really like that much, to be honest with you, because a lot of farmers actually went into uproar over that, about John Deere doing that, because a lot of them do not really have the money to go back and pay these companies like John Deere to have their vehicles repaired constantly. It's very expensive for them to do that. Farmers hardly make a living as it is, even with government subsidies. So, if I was president, don't really like the idea of John Deere having a right to repair. And it appears that they made this proposal for not necessarily for them to make a satellite, but more so for them to be able to have a satellite that'll help them to connect to their John Deeres better and make sure that people aren't tinkering with them whenever they want to, most likely. But with that,
although I will say, I think that the people that already had the John Deere tractors before they implemented that rule, they have a right to gripe. But if you're buying the tractor and you know that they're not going to let you repair it, it's like you can't buy it, know that, and then get upset because you could have bought a different tractor.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess, if people don't like that, and a lot of people are probably buying new tractors whenever it comes around to it, they may be buying the competitors' tractors, and John Deere may, in a couple of years, rescind this company policy and go back to anyone can repair the vehicle anywhere, and we're not going to make a problem out of it if you do that. but still,
True.
I don't really like that at this point. You know, it's like even if it is an optional thing, right to repair, that's it's kind of lame.
Yeah, and also it's farmers. I mean, it's like, come on, farmers are like just trying to like till the field and do like all the stuff they do on the farm. They're not trying to like get stiffed by a machine company.
Man,
So
I
that's
mean,
pretty lame.
like, even with all these machines, farmers do a tough job. There's a very small amount of them. There's only 3 million of them or less in the United States. They do a tough job. They hardly make any pay from it. And so making a farmer's job more difficult or more expensive is nothing I'm for, because I mean, like, hell, imagine the kind of backbreaking work, even in these tractors, which are huge tech, they have to go through to try and keep these things rolling. It's just to keep their farms rolling. It's ridiculous. But anyways,
Yes. Thank you for the food, and also you can't fix your tractor.
yeah, yeah. It's like, well, way to screw over the guys that are feeding you at your company. You know, you just walk into the store, into your store one day, eating a little pack of sushi or something that was most likely produced on an American farm and American fisheries and so on, and then to sit there and tell the guys who sat there and grew those crops, grew those fish all year long, that they can't even use your tractor, repair your tractors anymore on their own. They have to bring them back for warranty work. But and Indy Hansen said, right to repair is to help the farmers. The way I heard it explained to me, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but the way I heard it explained to me, it actually hurts them because it costs them a lot more. But if I'm wrong, please let me know, and I'll try and pull that up probably during the question segment at the end of the stream. But we're rabbit holing right now big time, and I'm sorry about that, everyone. But still, and I just want to make sure we address that one fairly well. So can we read the last one again real quick?
Let's see here. He said it was basically about the satellites that John Deere is supposed to be making, and John Deere's response to the soaring popularity of the Bobcat skid steer.
And yeah. So I guess maybe they are. It looks like they're doing it for right to repair. But yeah, maybe they are doing it to get a one-up on Bobcat in a way. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And you know something I just realized, Matthew? Psyops is a farmer. Let's ask Psyops. Like, what does he
He already left for the night.
Oh, dang it, man. Right when we needed him, he left. Dag nabbit. Anyways, with that.
Oh, he's still here, actually, in the chat. He said he was leaving, but I still see him.
Well, maybe you can answer that question for us about right to repair. But with that, I thank you all so much once again for the support. I hope that addressed the comments fairly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on back into the news and back into the Northeast. Starting off with the area of Nizhny Divanka, where we saw the 10th Brigade hitting the Russians. They hit the Russians somewhere outside of the area of, let me make sure I'm getting this right, Kuzmivka. That's somewhere up in between Kuzmivka and Sofivka. So the marker was put down here. But here is the 10th Brigade hitting the Russians. And also, you may notice that I'm branching out and trying to get the best videos from anywhere. So I actually went on to Twitter and roamed around there today to find some of these clips. And here's one of them. We can see the Russians moving around in a small F-shaped trench. And we can see there's quite a decent amount of them, maybe around 5 to 6. An F-1 bomblet was dropped at just the right time, and it appears to have most likely wounded 3 of them. We can now see the 3 wounded sitting there, and we can now see a larger artillery barrage, most likely a 155 millimeter, coming in on the area. It appears that they're either hitting a little bit above the trench, and they're now being walked into the trench itself. So they're adjusting fire, and it looks like none of the heavy artillery rounds hit the trench itself, but the bomblet certainly did some damage and wounded, or put 3 of them into a nice snap. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news in the Northeast, and beyond that, we haven't really been seeing a lot of news about what's happening up here. It appears that the front line, once again, has gotten into a quiet state, and I thought that since we're running a stream, and I saw a lot of interesting comments on the video I made today from folks saying some very interesting stuff. That was some really good points about the Battle of Bakhmut, that I would address it here on stream. We actually had some viewers say that Bakhmut is strategically important because it is a city, and urban areas are much easier and much more beneficial to defend than open ground, because forces can be pushed across the open ground really without any resistance. I would have to make a counter to that, because if we look at the northeastern area and we actually go to the deep state map, we can see, and I'll actually change it over to the satellite view to show the urban areas. We can actually see that almost the entirety of the northern area's front line is nowhere near any urban or built-up areas. Yes, there are a couple of villages here and there, but they are very small and very low density. They're not really the kind of urban environments that you would find in the city of Bakhmut. And this front line was pushed to this direction through the open ground and then held on the open ground for nearly 5 to 6 months at this point. And so, yes, while the Ukrainians could lose Bakhmut, an urban area is better to defend than a rural area or farmland, it is possible to create an incredibly large and incredibly well-defended I guess you could say farmland frontier like in the Northeast without being pushed to the next city. Because going off of the idea that you cannot hold the farmland in the fields, the Ukrainians would have been pushed back towards Kupiansk and also towards the rivers here again near Oskol, all the way up this reservoir, instead of being able to hold the farm fields here. So a very good point. I'll say that, though. It's a very good point to say that an urban area is better to hold. That's certainly true, but it doesn't mean that it is impossible to hold farm fields, because it is certainly possible. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of the northeastern area, as that's the only clip we have today, and back into Kramatorsk. Sometime over the past 24 hours, a floodgate was hit somewhere in the area. We don't know what reservoir it was connected to, although we're assuming it's the large reservoir near the area of Dmitriivka. And we saw that apparently heavy flooding has started to occur within the town of Kramatorsk itself. The police of Kramatorsk immediately sprung into action, springing forward to the flood area and immediately getting as many citizens out as they could. Police are unsung heroes of this war. They're both militia, in a way, fighting the Russians head-on with their own arms, and also making sure to protect the citizenry as well. Their job is actually a little bit more difficult than the Ukrainian armies in that, right? Because, one, they are as close to militia as you really can get in Ukraine. Of course, the Ukrainian police were also trained in military tactics, but that isn't really their primary job. And from what we understand, they don't get as much training as a TDF even gets in frontline fighting, yet they still have engaged Russian forces on the front lines, like in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, and done an incredible job. Not only that, not only after their frontline combat duties are over, they then have to return back to their municipalities, back to their cities, and they also have to protect and help the citizenry there, both through missile attacks, through floods like these, and everything else. And you've really got to give it to these guys here. Much like the sappers, they're unsung heroes of this war. The firefighters and the police have kind of disappeared into the I guess you could say the overall news of this war, but nonetheless, amazing people as well, doing unbelievable jobs. And it's great here that they saved 28 people and 10 animals. We can see the guy actually holding a dog right there from the flooded area. And it looks like it's going to be quite a flood and may not subside for maybe days or weeks. With that, we're now going to be moving on from this little bit of news in Kramatorsk and on into the Bakhmut news itself. And we went over this in great detail today in a video I uploaded, one of the first ones we've actually uploaded in, I believe, 2 or 3 months. So it's been quite a dry spell in videos. I'm very sorry about that. But it was a good video nonetheless, at least to me, and at least according to how many of y'all enjoyed it. It is one of our most enjoyed videos out of all of the ones that we've uploaded recently. It's actually #1 on our dashboard. And I was like, wow, it wasn't that bad of a video, apparently. And a lot of y'all liked it. The like rate's really high, too. It's like 99%. So, you know, it's like combing over the analytics, but a lot of y'all enjoyed it. So we're going to really just repeat the same thing here with Bakhmut. So, getting down here, and we're going to use the satellite footage here because this is about the best way to explain it. Right now, what we've seen is that Russian forces have advanced from the Bakhmut River, most likely because the forces from the south pushed northwards along the course of the river, freeing up an area where Russian forces could cross without resistance. That was most likely the easiest path for the Russian forces to take to get the rest of their forces across the river. They have now conducted that, so the Ukrainians are going up against the entire bulk of the Wagner forces that are currently fighting in the city. At this moment, we know that the Wagner makes up almost the entire composition of Russian forces fighting in and around the city, not Sydney, both in Yehidne and all the way down to Opitne as well. They control kind of a semicircle around the city. Further down, we see that the 3rd Separate Brigade is holding the area of Klishkivka and is also still conducting offensives through this forested area towards the town of Ivanivsky and also trying to cut off the T-0504 highway. Further up north, I believe it is something like, I'm trying to think of the name, it's like the 8th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Russian forces that is currently fighting in the area from Blagodatne down towards Berkivka, and they are also the ones that are conducting the small offensive heading in the direction of Rikovo-Vasilievka. From what we understand right now, the Wagner forces are, of course, the ones that are pushing the majority of the offensive, and while they've been whittled down massively, they are still in the fight. This also solidifies the idea that many people have brought forward that the Wagner, or Prigozhin, or as we call him on this channel, Mr. Nutsack, may have been given a contract to take the city, because it seems as though no matter the losses, the Wagner is the one that is pushing through the town, and so that makes it somewhat clearer and a little bit more evident that there must be some kind of monetary incentive behind having the entire Wagner destroyed just to take this town. The Russian forces appear to be on the weaker flanks, which may show that the Wagner is being thrown in there either for punishment, either for pay, we don't really know, but these guys on the flanks are getting it a little less worse than the Wagner in the center. The Russians are still pushing directly from the west, and they are engaging Ukrainian forces somewhere around the railroad station that we see here in the center of town and around the railway berms that also go through that area. From what we can tell, the route of advance that the Russians will most likely be taking will be towards the MiG-15 monument that we saw right here at this fork in the road. It's famous in the Battle of Bakhmut as being the photo op opportunity for many soldiers that entered the city. And at this moment, it appears that it is in no man's land, and this is also jeopardizing the T-0504 highway that is also supplying Ukrainian forces inside of the city. The Russians may try and attempt to extend forwards onto that MiG-15 monument and finally take it, because that means that the supply lines on the T-0504 will be completely cut off, and Ukrainian supplies will then have to move over really one final route, this one small road right here into Bakhmut. We don't really know if it's a dirt road or a gravel road, but it is one or the other. We certainly know that it is not paved. And considering that it's not paved and the Rasputitsa season is currently in full swing, that means that Ukrainian logistics may be slowed down to a crawl, and also it only gives them one route to advance the supplies into the town, which means that that path will most likely be under a pretty consistent artillery barrage by the Russians, which will also destroy more of the supplies further. So based off of that, another thing that we've seen, and I'll show y'all, is that over the past few days, Russian forces, of course, have been advancing from the south. And let me go back several days and show y'all this, because here was the zone of control on the 28th of March, and we can see that it is quite larger. But once the Russians here in the south start to advance northwards and almost create this prong that could, punch on through the Ukrainian lines, we saw that the Ukrainians started to give up a decent amount of territory on the eastern side of the railroad tracks, and then it retreat their lines to the railroad tracks themselves. This seems to show that the Ukrainians are trying to protect their rear lines, and so if the Russians do try and break through in this area near the MiG-15 monument, we may see the Ukrainians start giving up a decent portion of the city and moving back either to Ivanivske or all the way back towards Chasiv Yar or the ridgelines behind the city itself. Because it seems as though that is currently the Ukrainian strategy, is to make sure to protect their rear lines and avoid encirclement, but ensure that as much of the town can be held as possible. So that appears to be the overall situation in Bakhmut as of the moment. I hope y'all enjoyed that, because we rarely ever go into great frontline detail like that anymore. If y'all enjoyed that, let me know, because I'll be trying to do that in more places, because while we see this and while I know it, we generally try and keep the news as light and uncomplicated as possible. Our primary goal on this channel, I don't know if some people get this, because usually we get flack for this. Our primary goal on this channel is the Sunday fundraisers. Like, we really don't care if how the news is delivered. All we care is how many Ukrainian lives we be saving every single Sunday through a fundraiser. This last weekend, we were able to raise $10.3 thousand for Razum for Ukraine. That's going to be helping soldiers to have a future after this war, and that's big to us. That's the whole reason we run this channel. So if y'all like that and y'all really did enjoy that, let me know, because we want to make sure that y'all enjoyed as much as possible, but at the same time, we also want to prioritize saving Ukrainian lives. That's one thing that I don't know. For some reason, people always act like on YouTube that the video content on the war should be priority over saving lives. I feel like it should be the opposite way around. Saving lives should be the priority over the YouTube content quality. And however we have to do that, that's how we do it. But anyways.
Speak it.
Preach it. But with that, we're now moving on to the video clips themselves. And in the area of Blahodatne, we saw the 8th Separate Rifle Brigade lose a tank today from Ukrainian anti-tank fire. And so we can see the tank advancing under heavy metal. That wasn't really supposed to come out like that. We can see it now moving down this dirt road and immediately hit by an AT weapon, destroying the tank immediately and most likely taking the crew with it.
I guess you could say it rushed to failure.
Oh yeah, certainly. Oh man, oh wait a minute, we won't do that.
No.
But anyways, moving on from the area of Blahodatne and further south to the area of Berkivka, we saw a 100mm MT Rapira come under fire. These vehicles were actually quickly constructed at the beginning of the war to provide some kind of anti-tank fire on a mobile platform. Very bizarre looking vehicle, and it's very crude, but from what we can tell, the Ukrainians like them a good deal because they use these things a large amount. So here's the clip. This thing will also come under artillery fire at a distance. Oh, we got the woman on the cliffs of Sparta singing the song as the 300 hold Thermopylae. But anyways,
Thermopylae? What is that, like the Thermite version of Monopoly?
oh, get out of here.
Man, I'm gonna play some of Thermopylae.
Let's see if the music's still playing. It's not anymore. So we can see the Rapira in its position getting ready to fire. We can see that they actually have the ammo crates themselves directly behind the gun in this Rapira. And they're now firing.
I can see the like heat wave off of that thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, these 100mm guns are old. They're very old, but they still pack a pretty decent punch against infantry. Oh my god, wow, this thing got so hot apparently that the ink just smudges right off the shell after it's fired. That's got to be hot.
That's toasty.
Yeah, that thing's toasty, man. We can now see them lining up the Rapira again. It appears that at the angle it's firing, it's most likely firing several miles away from it in an indirect fashion, most likely at infantry. And we hear a round fly right over their heads and explode in the distance. It seems as though the Russians may be trying to get the artillery fire down, but that appears to be nearly 500 yards away, 600 yards away, maybe at the most. We hear another round fly over, and once again explode in the distance, and it appears that the Russians know they're here, but they're not able to bring in the artillery fire accurately.
Ты так думаешь?
Hear another round fly over and explode behind them. And it actually appears that the Russians may be believing that their artillery fire is dead on because they've all fallen in the same group out here in the distance. It's not that bad of a spread. And so it seems as though they think the fire is accurate and they're not trying to walk it into the MTLB. They actually think they're about 600 yards further back. The Rapira is still getting ready to fire. We hear another round flying over, and we'll be seeing it explode in the distance here in a second. That one actually made a little ricochet noise as it hit the ground, and that one appears to be a little further off than the rest.
Sounds like that like arcade gun thing that they have like at Bass Pro Shop when you shoot at the
Yeah,
squirrels.
yeah, it does, doesn't it? It kind of sounds like those redneck guns in the movies where they go on, get it. You know, it does that. But we can see the Rapira firing again. We can see him immediately going back to loading, and that's the end of the video. Once again, very interesting and neat to see these MT Rapiras in action, and also showing that while the Russians do have drones, they have drones just like the Ukrainians, and apparently they don't have enough to always guide in their fire accurately, and so it looks like Russian artillery was trying to eyeball or guesstimate the range, and they were about 600 yards off and not hitting the Rapira. We didn't get any video, news, or evidence from the center of Bakhmut today to show how the fights are progressing in the city, but we would assume they're progressing like every other day, most likely heavy firefights to the east, and also firefights to the south as the Ukrainians trying to hold the perimeter around the T-0504. We're now going to be moving behind the town near Ivaniske, where we saw an M777 firing at the Russians. And this thing's in swampy conditions. I don't know what it is, man. My speech is getting worse and worse as the war keeps going. I don't know what it is about that. But we can see
I think it's just you, as I haven't noticed anything.
You think I still talk like I did at the beginning of the war? Because I don't feel like it.
Yeah. sounds the same to me.
I must be getting critical of myself then. But anyways, an M777 firing in the middle of the Rasputitsa. Yeah! Dude, if that cameraman was just 12 feet closer, he would have been getting a mud shower. Like, that thing just flung up a shower of mud. Golly, man. Goodness. You know, Shrek would love that. But anyways, we're moving on from that little clip of the M777 firing its gun, well, the M777 firing in muddy conditions, and we're now going to be moving back towards the area of Klishchiivka. This video clip accidentally showed up as the one where Stoltenberg was supposed to be saying Ukraine would be in NATO, but it's actually here from Klishchiivka, where we saw a Nona SPG get destroyed. Oh. We can see the Nona right there. Some of y'all may be going, what the hell? Like, that is not a Nona. That's like a BMD or a BMP. A Nona is actually a little different than a BMP or a BMD. I'll show y'all a picture of one right here. It is based off of the BMD-2 hull, but it actually has a 120mm short-barreled, I guess you could say, howitzer inside of a specialized turret. And so it's more of like an airborne version of artillery support. That is supposed to be used by Russian airborne forces. We can see that this one's being showed off as one of Russia's finest, and it looks like the tracks have seen finer days. These things are about to have rusted clean through, and I don't think this thing would be used well on the front lines, but anyways, that is what a Nona actually looks like. It's a little different than a BMD. But with that, here's the clip of one of these things going to hell. We can see that it's in the middle of Klishchiivka right there. We can see the artillery round hit it, and the ammunition inside of it immediately detonates, creating a massive mushroom cloud, and most likely sending the turret to the heavens. When the Russian commissar came by and asked these guys, "Hey, are you okay, Bliat?" The artillerist said, "None of your business." We can see the turret right there, and it looks like this thing was toasted thoroughly. With that, that's the end of the clip. An impressive work by the Ukrainian artillery, once again wiping out another Russian artillery piece, although it's more so of a mortar than an artillery. Well, anyways, a mortar is artillery. I don't know what the hell I'm saying right there. It is artillery. Anyways, we're now moving on out of the area of Bakhmut and all the video clips we had from there today, once again showing the battle as it continues on. And we're now going to be moving down to the area of Zaitseva, where we saw a drone take out a counter battery station, or a counter battery radar. Counter battery radars are being used by both sides to try and triangulate their fire, their counter artillery fire onto the other's artillery positions. Destroying these is of vital importance, as it of course blinds the Russians to where the artillery batteries that the Ukrainians have really are firing from. And so this little drone conducted a very special operation today in taking out this counter artillery radar that you can see right there. And as the frame freezes, we can see that that thing is certainly not surviving this attack. It hit it literally dead center, and the Russians will not be knowing where the Ukrainian artillery fire is coming from in this area for a good while. We're now going to be moving on.
Man, it's just like Call of Duty. Like those little Landsat things are like sitting around the map. Like go and shoot them and destroy them. Same thing.
It's exactly the same. I mean, like, it's like Call of Duty, had something going for them there for a little bit, but then
It's like it's a real war.
They made sucky games where they called like the AR and the M16 a stoner. And I know why they're calling it that. It's named after Eugene Stoner, but that's still dumb. Anyways, we're moving on to the area of Orlivka, where we saw a Ukrainian soldier use a javelin to destroy a tank. And we hear the copyright-free political action music playing in the background as the javelin launches and now travels on its way to its target. We're about to watch it explode in the distance here any minute now. And we can see it right out there. Poof! And it explodes, taking out a tank. That's the end of the clip. Very nice to see that St. Javelin is still protecting the soldiers of Ukraine by destroying the tanks from miles away. We're now going to be moving on from the clip of St. Javelin and his trusty side weapon, the Javelin, believe it or not, in use. And we're now going to be moving down to the area of the perimeter of the Donetsk airport. The Donetsk airport has been a battlefield ever since 2014, nearly 9 years since the start of the Donetsk uprising then. And we saw that the 59th hit the Russians in that area today again. And so once again, we're getting horror music here, so we're going to mute that. We see a Russian walking outside of this destroyed building near the Donetsk airport and waving around real quick, just so that way the drone knows they're there. He's now going back inside the destroyed house to hang out with the bros, but it appears that the Ukrainians do not like Russians chilling with the bros. They're about to be taking them all out. We now see the FPV drone flying in and lining itself up for a window. And instead of asking how much is the puppy in the window, they said how many bomb pounds went through the window. And it appears to be quite a sizable amount, about 10 kilos.
Oh.
Oh, 10
10
kilos. That jinx. We thought the same thing. But with that, Russians turned to pulp. And I guess you could say that the Ukrainians like their Russians with pulp instead of no pulp. With that, that's the end of the clip, and of course, very interesting to see the 59th Brigade hit the Russians again, and that time with incredible skill with that drone pilot. We're now going to be moving out of the area of Donetsk. Not a lot happened on the front line today. The Battle of Avdiivka is progressing as normal with very little frontline changes, and we're now going to be moving on down to the area of Staromanivka, where we saw that a Darwin Award was achieved today by Russian forces. The video explains itself. Here's the clip. We can see the Ruski down in their trench. We can see the drone flying into the destroyed tree line and snagging a tree. It then crashes. We also may have been explained that it was destroyed by rifle fire. And we can see the drone right there. It actually says drone. Literally, it just says drone in Cyrillic right there. And we can also see the Russian right there. So he's looking at the drone, and he decides that the best thing to do would be to hit it in typical Russian fashion. You see him looking at it. He's about to hit it any minute now. And, oh, uh-oh. It looks like he won the Darwin Award today. I feel very sorry for that Russian. He sadly won the Darwin Award, and he'll be gone, but he won't be forgotten, as he'll always have a statue of himself built in the Darwin Awards Hall of Fame for being the guy who literally punched a drone with a bomb on the bottom of it and ended his demise. Matthew, let's give a moment of silence to that Russian who sacrificed his life to remind us all how not to be stupid.
Wah, wah, wah. Wah, wah, wah.
All right, enough of that. All right, we're moving on. We're moving on here. So we're now moving out of the southern front area near Staromanivka, and we're now moving on to the area of the southern front near Kharkiv, where we saw Russian defensives, and thankfully, a Ukrainian, assuming partisan, was driving their car and literally just filmed themselves driving through Russian defenses. So we got a pretty good look today at how they're spaced out and what we'll be seeing if the Ukrainians start to engage Russians in this area. First, we have the Dragon's Teeth, an extensive row of anti-tank traps made out of concrete. We can now see them driving through a second row of Dragon's Teeth, and a third row of Dragon's Teeth, and now a fourth row of Dragon's Teeth. They're now driving through a fifth row of Dragon's Teeth. This one also has some small concrete bunkers. A sixth row of Dragon's Teeth. It appears they're now driving through a small town. We see more trucks lined up with more Dragon's Teeth. And it appears that the Russians are trying to fortify the southern front as best as possible. Of course, Dragon's Teeth aren't impervious. They can be blown away, and you can make a path through them. It's just that it's going to take time, and it will slow down an attacking force. We now see them moving through another checkpoint, once again with concrete small bunkers. We now see a military checkpoint with Russian soldiers. We now see them passing through even more Dragon's Teeth. Yeah, hell, you would think the dragons were real with how many Dragon's Teeth there are around here. Goodness. Now another checkpoint.
АБРки так и не появилась.
A bear? That border checkpoint guy did not sound like he was smart enough to do that job.
Нормалек все? Какие вы молодцы, блин.
Another checkpoint.
Как дела?
Excuse me, he asked for what? Let me go back a little bit.
Отцы, как дела?
Whoa, hey, easy now. The Russians may have gotten a shipment of those things. I'm just kidding. Как дела means how are you in Ukrainian, well, really in Russian. And now Matthew gets the joke, but anyways.
Отпустите нас домой.
Another checkpoint. Good God, they got a million of these things. that's the end of the video, and giving us a very good idea of what Russian defensive positions look like. It appears to be almost nothing more than dragon's teeth, a very large amount of them, which appears that they are incredibly scared, much like I've been saying, of the Ukrainians using their armor to support their infantry in an offensive. Tanks will be used in an offensive, and it appears that they are ready for that in the southern front, at least with the dragon's teeth, but in reality, probably not ready at all. We're now going to be moving out of the southern front and on into the Dnipro River, as we actually got a video today from United 24 explaining to us that the Ukrainians actually do have a river fleet of pretty advanced boats. And so here's the video.
Dnipro is one of the biggest rivers in Europe. It's 1,333 miles long and flows through Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. In Ukraine, it goes through major cities and connects the north with the south of the country. Basically, it serves as a water gate to Ukraine. There is a constant threat that the enemy can use the river to infiltrate the territory with subversive groups. Lately, Russia has also been launching drones along Dnipro aimed at Kiev. It's more difficult for air defense system to spot them above the river, as they fly extremely low, close to the water. But Dnipro could also play a vital strategic role in the much anticipated counteroffensive in south of Ukraine. That is why the river fleet was created last year as a new branch of the Ukrainian Navy. It's not a secret that during the martial law, the government has the right to seize the civilian vessels in favor of army. And that's exactly what happened to this vessel. Its name is hydrobiologist, and by the name alone, you can understand that it was meant for some scientific purposes. It was built in Ukraine in order to analyze the waters of River Dnipro and the underwater grounds, actually after the Chernobyl catastrophe. Now, however, after some tweaks and modernization, like this one, it is serving in the river flotilla as a support vessel for the crews that are on their combat missions.
We're getting a lot of military packages, and most of them, they consist of riverine-related stuff, like boats, like machinery. What I see now, that we're building quite a big fleet, our riverine fleet, to make sure that nobody else,
And they got sirens on the boats.
will think of invading Ukraine.
Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop. But we're gonna let it continue. I'm sorry, all I had to do it.
From the water resources we have.
Now I gotta be entirely honest with you here. I gotta go back and show this one again.
Water resources we have.
That was my watch hitting, just in case anyone was wondering. That thing right there actually looks like a tiny Zumwalt. Like, I don't know if I'm the only one who sees it. It really looks like a tiny Zumwalt. I think it's really
agree.
neat. I like it. I don't know what kind of guns they got on that thing, though, but still a very neat looking little boat. Biggins.
Last summer, the US sent 18 high-speed patrol boats to Ukraine. Some of them are now serving in the 1st Division of the River Fleet, like these 34-foot Dauntless Sea Arcs.
That's pretty nice, very good 34-foot patrol boat, which is being widely used in the United States of America for riverine fleet. Maneuverability and speed of this boat is quite incredible. The maximum speed is like 35 knots.
Good
so
God!
when you try to turn the vessel 180 degrees, the advance will be just below than 10 meters. 10 meters and you're going backwards. On the boat where you don't have, say, full protection, so you are not protected from 7.62 or even more calibers. So that means that you have to be very maneuvering, otherwise you can get hit. Till now, we did not get hit, luckily, so it means we're doing our job quite good.
In addition, each vessel has 3-point mounts for M2 Browning machine guns and
That guy literally condensed this whole argument down into, we haven't been shot, so it's going good. That's literally what he said. He's like, we ain't dying, it's okay.
MK19 40mm automatic.
He's not
grenade
wrong.
launchers.
He ain't lying, because he ain't dying.
That was a good one, actually.
Bucha is the name of the Ukrainian-made Gurza small armored gunboat, a flagship of the River Fleet. It is equipped with a 30mm ZTM-1 cannon, a 7.62mm machine gun, a 30mm automatic grenade launcher, and a guided missile system with 4 anti-tank missiles that can penetrate tank armor of up to 800mm thick.
Golly!
Even if the tank is protected by so-called reactive armor. With a speed of 25 knots per hour, it is quite fast for a heavily armored vessel.
Once the invasion started, the ratio of our fleet and the Russian fleet
was like skyrocketing. I mean, it was 1 to 10 or 14. And since we shut down the Moscow cruiser and some other boats, these military warships, then the ratio actually went down. And now we're talking about 1 to 5 or 1 to 8. And we're getting a lot of minesweepers. We're getting a lot of supply boats. So basically the fleet on the river and at the sea is just expanded.
A very interesting.
Man, United 24 knows how to make a good, like, little mini documentary.
I mean, man, they had to have an editor from Grand Thumb on that channel because, like, I feel like it's almost like the same kind of like cinematography as they do sometimes. It's really good. I mean, it's great, and it's a very interesting insight as well into a part of the Ukrainian military that we don't see at all. We've never really heard or looked at the river fleet in the wars at all, really. And it's crazy to see that they've been updated, modernized. They've had their numbers bolstered heavily throughout this whole entire war. And this is really the first time we've ever seen a comprehensive video made about those changes in the expansion of their river fleet. Really cool to see. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of that area and into Kherson, where we saw the 73rd shelling the Russians on the other side of the river today. And they have a little seahorse. The seahorse does not make that noise, by the way. Only dying cats make that noise. We're now going to mute the video as they have the pangolin playing, and we can't play that. That's copyrighted. We can see a Russian right there. I can't really tell what kind of Russian that is, but we can now see the artillery coming in on it. We can also see another Russian object in the tree line up there. It appears the artillery is almost getting right on top of it. We can now see a vehicle moving. And we now see the artillery once again exploding onto the vehicles. It appears that they may have hit one, as that fire is lingering for a good while over there. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And that, of course, was the 73rd Brigade's act of the day. Hooray! And so with that, we're now moving on from that little clip and on down to our last clip from Kherson, where we saw some Russian artillery blown up. And of course, as the guy on the Arby's commercial says, all of our food keeps blowing up! So here's the clip. I had to do it. But here we go. This is from the 406 Artillery Brigade. And we can see the Russian artillery piece right down there. The artillery shell hits dead onto the piece, exploding, definitely destroying the breach. And it appears that it was a Gyantsant B.
That looks like a War Thunder, like, model.
It kind of does, doesn't it? I was about to say that, too. I was like, that looks a lot like a War Thunder model. So with that, that's the end of the clip.
Nice and sweet and short.
Oh, that was a short and sweet. When the Gyantsant was there, the Gyantsant's gone. All that needs to be explained. And our final clip, actually, before we get to the speech from Zelenskyy, is actually of a firefight that broke out somewhere in Crimea today. We believe this is actually partisans attacking the Russian army somewhere in Crimea, but we really can't confirm this because not a lot of information is known about this video. Nonetheless, here's the clip, and I'll let y'all decide what this is. You hear gunfire erupting in the parking lot over. You can see some people moving around, but we really can't tell if they are the ones with the guns or not. And it does appear that these may be either partisans or the Russian army shooting at something. You now hear a machine gun firing, and we see what I'm assuming is Russian forces hiding behind the cars and firing into the distance. I'm not really sure what is fire and return fire at the moment, but it seems to be something of a standoff.
This does actually, like Kirk said, that's just Detroit. This actually seems like a night in a major city sometimes in America.
Meanwhile, in, let's see.
Montgomery.
Yeah, meanwhile in Montgomery. Meanwhile.
It actually does sound like this at night. Like, yeah, we're not even making that up.
A lot of kids growing up in Montgomery will look up into the skies at night and go, look, a shooting star, look, another one. And then mom will come out, so, son, that's just tracer fire. Come on back inside. Firefights now ended. Whoops, sorry. Firefights not ended.
No, that's just a friendly Draco down the street.
Kilo Shari said, really difficult to imagine this as being normal. Well, you know. You
get used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it. But with that, we're now going to be moving out of Nefedorivka in Crimea. We don't know what that firefight was about, but it's nowhere close to Ukrainian forces, so we're assuming that they were engaging partisan forces in the area that were attacking the Russian army. We're now going to be moving out of Crimea, and of course we've covered all of the news that there was today. And of course, before we move on to the speech, I know a lot of people start to leave because they're here for the news, but I got to thank you all so much once again for watching this news and finding us to be a credible source to watch. We are highly honored that so many people come to this channel and watch our news, and we thank every single one of y'all once again for watching. If y'all found it to be worth your time, make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe, as that helps this channel to spread and let the Lee Spring Army grow. And so, without further ado, it's time for us to move on to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on day 406 of the war. This is also 45 minutes, so we're probably going to cut it down to about the first 8 or so. And also this was while Zelenskyy was in Poland. He did visit Poland today. I didn't cover that, but still, here's the... Oh? Musica. Oh, let me go. Let me go get the English subtitles.
Is that piped in, or is that at the place?
I think that might be at the place. Go get English. There we go.
Szanowni Państwo,
Президент Республіки Польща, пан Анджей Дуда з дружиною, а також президент України, пан Володимир Зеленський.
And we are going to advance forward. I know that many of y'all may want to hear Andrzej Duda, or Duha, I don't know how it's pronounced specifically, give his speech, but we will be skipping forward tonight because we're here for the speech from President Zelenskyy to Zelensky's speech. Although Andrzej is a pretty interesting fella and also a huge supporter of Ukraine. Nonetheless, here's the video and the speech from Zelenskyy.
Brawo! Witaj Polsko! Wielki narodzie polski! Wielki narodzie ukraiński! Tu ramię w ramię, zjednoczeni na tym placu duchem wolności, wielkiej historii i chwalebnego zwycięstwa, które razem przybliżamy. Ми знаємо одне одного, українці і поляки, і знаємо дуже давно. І зараз у серці польської столиці українські серця звертаються до кожного із польських сердець. Це честь для мене бути тут. Я промовляю до вас словами вдячності і сили. Вдячності, бо немає більше таких моментів, коли б ми були порізно, коли б ми були не об'єднані. Українські і польські серця б'ються за одну свободу, за обопільну незалежність наших держав, за нашу рідну Європу, наш спільний дім, і ми переможемо. Немає більше такої сили, яка б переважила українське і польське братерство. А завдяки цьому справдяться слова. Co nam obca, przemoc żyła, szablą odbierzemy. Запануємо, браття, і ми усюди у своїй сторонці. Щоразу, коли український прапор повертається на абсолютно законне місце на українській землі, а російський окупант втікає, міцніше і польський прапор. Жовто-сині і біло-червоні – ці 4 кольори міцніше за ворожий триколор. Кожен успішний бій українських героїв за нашу незалежну державу додає захисту і польській незалежності. Польські краби і перуни в руках українців, які повертають нашим людям свободу, додають міцності і вашій свободі. Ось що означає наше уміння українців і поляків будувати нашу переможну історію пліч-опліч. І я вдячний за це братерство кожному поляку. Уклін тобі, Польще, оплески тобі, польський народе. Вдячний тобі, друже Анджею, пане президенте, твоїй дружині Агаті. І для мене честь бути тут разом з моєю дружиною сьогодні. Тобі, друже Матеушу, пане прем'єр-міністре, дякую вам, пані маршалок і пане маршалку, усім польським лідерам тут у Варшаві і всюди у гмінах та людям Польщі, які знають, що означає для вашої свободи наша свобода. Я вдячний усім вам, хто зараз на цій площі, хто чує мене по всій Польщі. Сьогодні я був на площі маршалка Пілсудського, поруч із цим місцем, і там, де 79-го року прозвучали слова великої людини, великого поляка Івана Павла II, звертаючись до Бога, а він сказав: «Нех зстąpi дух твой і однові обличчя землі, тей землі». І сьогодні очевидно, наскільки щедрим був Господь, коли почув ці слова. Вільна Польща постала і ніколи не впаде. Вільна Україна постала і ніколи не впаде. Та чужа влада, що хотіла контролювати наші народи і не розуміла, чого ми прагнемо, просто розсипалася. А ми стоїмо. Ми стоїмо разом, пліч-опліч, Україна і Польща, і Європа, і вільний світ. Стоїмо, і коли знов кинуто повномасштабні сили агресії проти нашої свободи, що ж, впаде і цей режим, що пішов війною проти нас. Він приніс могили Україні, щоб потім принести могили знов і Польщі, і усім нашим братам і сестрам вільної Європи. А ми боремось пліч-опліч. Він приніс депортації українцям, щоб знов депортувати і інших, чия свобода дихає на землях, які Росія збирається вкрасти. А ми захищаємось пліч-опліч. Ворог хотів поховати нашу з вами незалежність та розчинити в російському просторі наші національні культури, а ми стоїмо міцно. Ми з вами, українці і поляки, разом пліч-опліч. Повернемо все це зло епітафією російському імперіалізму. Ми з тобою, Польща, пліч-опліч. Утвердимо свободу в Європі назавжди. Тиранія програє в історії, коли програє в Україні. Москва не вбиватиме, а Петербург не ділитиме більше ніколи. На цій славетній площі та на будь-якій іншій польській площі, так само, як і на всіх українських майданах, більше ніколи не буде Росії після нашої перемоги. Чи багато ще треба кроків до неї? Ні. Треба лише не зупинятися у солідарності. Коли битва вимагає артилерії, її варто надавати. Коли перемога потребує танків, їхній гуркіт має зазвучати на передовій. Коли незалежність потребує повітря, не треба звертати увагу, як відреагують в Росії на літаки у нас. Не варто гадати, яке число виглядатиме безпечніше поруч із літерою F, 16 чи якесь інше. Варто діяти. Так само, як ваше лідерство проявило себе в танковій коаліції. Вірю, що проявиться і в авіаційній коаліції. Бо це битва за свободу, і в ній неможливо виграти частково. Коли у Варшаві нещодавно виступав наш з вами союзник, потужний союзник свободи, президент Байден, він сказав: немає солодшого слова, ніж свобода, немає шляхетнішої мети, ніж свобода, немає вищого прагнення, ніж свобода. Ми, українці і поляки, це добре знаємо, тому і немає такого питання між нами, яке ми не вирішимо, щоб посилити наш спільний захист. Тому і цей мій візит, переговори тут, у Варшаві, стали ще одним кроком до перемоги. І я дякую за рішення, погоджені сьогодні, за потужний оборонний пакет. Дякую за життя, які ми спільно з вами рятуємо нашою солідарністю. Дорогі польські народи, я певен, ти знаєш, що солідарність охоплює зараз значно більше, ніж долю наших двох народів. Коли ми із вами вільні, це гарантія, що свобода буде міцною в усіх наших країнах, сусідах в Євросоюзі. Румунія і Словаччина, Литва та інші країни Балтії – всі сильніше, коли ми вільні. Коли ми вільні, це гарантія, що свобода вистоїть в Молдові, не полишить Грузії і прийде, обов'язково прийде в Білорусь.
This is an incredible speech. It's very good, actually, and I was debating for a good while here whether we should let the remaining 7 minutes run. In the advent of making sure to try and keep everything on schedule, at least, and the amount of time we'll have for questions, we're going to be cutting out the last 6 minutes. But if you do want to watch this, there is a link to the speech in the description below. Go click on the Day 406 map, and you can go find the link in Kyiv that'll take you to this exact speech. Or you can go to the President's Office of Ukraine and find it there as well. And so with that, we have rounded out the end of tonight's news. Actually, a lot of people are saying to let the speech continue to run. Let's see, that's actually a lot of people saying to let it continue to run. So, I don't know. I think, you know, everyone's actually saying that. So, we're going to go back and just let it keep running. So, we're going back and we're going back. That's all I can say. So, here's the speech from Zelenskyy again. We're just going to pick up right where we left off.
Балтії всі сильніше, коли ми вільні. Коли ми вільні, це гарантія, що свобода вистоїть в Молдові, не полишить Грузії.
One second, everyone. Let me make sure to get the subtitles set up again and auto-translate. And we want to go to English. There we go. And the speech will be running again.
І прийде, обов'язково прийде в Білорусь. Чим більше свободи буде у нас з вами, навколо нас, тим більше гарантій буде і у справедливості, у того, що наш спільний ворог відповідатиме, справедливо відповідатиме за Биківню та Бучу, за Катинь та Смоленськ, відповідатиме до кінця свого життя тут, на землі і навіки перед Богом. Справедливість – це буде історичний здобуток наших поколінь, і шлях прокладається так само нашим братерством, українцями і поляками, що йдуть пліч-опліч. Брати і сестри поляки, ще кілька поколінь тому все те, на чому зараз базується наша сила, було лише завданням. Єжи Гедроїць учив, що немає незалежної Польщі без незалежної України. Це вивчено. І я би продовжив: не виграти Росії у Європі, коли українець і поляк стоять пліч-опліч. Це вивчимо. І так само, як ми із тобою, Польща, стоїмо разом в цій війні, будемо насолоджуватись і миром. Разом, пліч-опліч в усьому. Разом в Європейському Союзі. Разом у НАТО. Це продовження нашої долі вільних народів. Історичне порозуміння між нашими народами маємо підкріплювати усім. Все, що маємо вирішити для інтересів і спокою наших суспільств, повинні вирішити. Від співпраці військової, політичної, економічної, енергетичної до кропіткої роботи істориків. Коли приймаємо, що людське життя – найвища цінність, ми вшановуємо пам'ять і гідність кожної людини. Усіх, хто жив перед нами, усіх, хто потребує поваги. І тут не повинно бути жодних заборон. Саме наша з вами обопільна і абсолютна повага нестиме світові українську і польську культури. Завжди нестиме. Бо ми назавжди врятувалися нашою єдністю, нашою рішучістю. Дорогий Жешове, я дякую тобі за те, що ти став першим містом-рятівником для України. Перемишле, Любліне, Хелме, дякую вам. Дякую вам. Вам, що відкрилися нашим людям у час, коли це було найбільш потрібно. Гданську і Вроцлаве, Катовіце і Білостоку, Кракове і Варшаву. Кожне місто Польщі, яке стало таким гостинним для наших людей, я дякую вам. Дякую за те, що українські діти у Польщі можуть жити в повазі, а українські дорослі отримали від польської держави закон, що гарантує їм ті ж права і можливості, що є у ваших людей. Дякую усім волонтерам Польщі, які допомагають, можна гучніше волонтерам, які допомагають нашим людям тут, на польській землі та в Україні, і навіть ризикуючи своїм життям. Дякую всім, хто тренує українських солдатів на польській землі. І дякую кожному польському серцю, що піднімає свої молитви також і за українців. Дорогі українці, дорогі українки у Польщі, щодня працюємо для того, щоб вигнати ворога з України, щоб повернути безпеку усім нашим містам і селам, щоб наші люди, які знайшли прихисток в інших країнах могли повернутися додому. І я дякую усім вам, хто допомагає державі. Дорогі поляки, усі європейці, бажаю вам щасливих прийдешніх великодніх свят. І усім перемоги життя над агресією, перемоги в боях, що тривають зараз в Україні. Слава усім нашим воїнам, які б'ються за нашу і вашу свободу. Слава Україні! Хвала Польщі!
And so with that is
Man, we sure do love the polls.
And we do love the polls, both the polls in the live chat and the polls in Poland. And so with that is the end of tonight's news. I thank every single one of y'all so much for watching. We're actually done with the speech this time. We're not just stopping and then restarting it again. And of course, thank you all so much once again. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button. Also, make sure to comment and subscribe on this channel. We run this news every single day of the week, 6 days a week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can always count on us to never miss a night. Now, the internet may kill us halfway through the night, and we may not ever come back like we did last night in the last 15 minutes of the stream, but we will be here every single night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can always count on it. And so with that, thank you so much, everyone, once again. And we're now going to be moving on into the polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and for our first poll, the question is, the Russian foreign minister says that they need to continue to support U.S. relations, and what are your thoughts? And yes, he actually said that. I can't believe it. 40% said they're feeling the pain of sanctions. 28% said, translated, give me the window fast. 7% said unsure, and 25% said it's just for propaganda. Now, I think this fella might be looking for a window, and he might not have to look far after saying something like that. It's also maybe indicative of the pain they're feeling from the sanctions, because to say that they want U.S. relations after what's happened between Russia and the U.S. seems a little bit odd. They've been doing pretty much everything but trying to mend the relationship between the two. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that the man's certainly looking for a window. Get this man a window. Stats. But yes, that's really bizarre to hear them say. You know, of course, I have to say, just like Matthew, there's a massive disclaimer with everything you see in Russia, because a lot of things you see around the world aren't necessarily true. But everything coming out of Russia is always a lie. It's a guarantee. So it may be the case that they're just doing that for the cameras. It may just be a multitude of reasons. They may have just decided, hey, you need to be hated now, so go out there and say this. And he went, okay, comrades, for the mother Russia. And then he went out there to make it look like there is opposition, but really it's just controlled opposition. Don't really know, but on the surface, it seems as though he is window watching, and he may be window flying. And so with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, the second poll says, Hungary says that inviting Ukraine to NATO undermines the security of the alliance, and what are your thoughts? 38% said, Orban is really anti-Ukraine. 31% said right now it would, and yes. 7% said unsure, and 24% said that's not true whatsoever. Now on this one, I will have to say that if Ukraine were to enter NATO at this point, with this conflict ongoing, that would certainly endanger NATO's security. I would have to agree with that. But I believe they can't actually enter NATO until the conflict is over, so that's not really a concern. But on its face, yeah, the statement does make sense, but we really know what the ulterior motive was behind him making this statement. Orban is really questionable in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that doesn't really make a lot of sense, considering the Russians put them on the list of unfriendly countries, for them to still sit there and say something like that. Putting NATO, putting Ukraine in NATO in the future will not pose any threat to the security of NATO at all. If that is the case, then that means putting Hungary in the NATO alliance back in the 90s was a mistake, and they shouldn't be in NATO right now. And that's not true, because if you ask the Hungarians, they'll go, oh, it's great, it really helps us, and, you know, that wouldn't be true according to their logic. So I would say that after the war, it's perfectly fine. During this war, not necessarily a good idea. But with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, the third one says Zelenskyy visited Poland today in an announced visit. That's a tongue twister, as we saw in the video. And is Zelenskyy getting comfortable with travel? 61% said yes, and he needs to be careful. 7% said unsure. 21% said yes, and it's a good change. And 11% said no, and he's still very sheltered. And I will have to admit, when I saw him standing out there in front of that crowd, I was thinking, first off, he appeared to be wearing body armor, which is very smart. But he's playing it a little bit risky, getting out in front of all those people. I don't think Ukraine can afford to lose Zelenskyy right now. And the benefit of giving that speech, although it was a really good one, may not be outweighing the cons of the situation. So he needs to be very, very careful because a lot of people would like to get him. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it is interesting to see him travel. I think it's a good thing to, of course, garner support from other countries to travel around to them and talk there to the people and also to the government as well. But, of course, he does need to be careful. There's a lot of people who want him dead. And many of you may notice that U.S. presidents do not take the same kinds of risks. For example, when you see a president giving a speech here in the United States, there is 1, a ring of Secret Service. 2, the entire area is combed by Secret Service. Every single person in that crowd probably went through some kind of a checkpoint to make sure they didn't have weapons. 3, they also put the president behind a massive bulletproof shield of glass. 4, he also probably has the Beast, not Mr. Beast, but the Beast, somewhere in the background somewhere, ready to take him away if he gets shot or injured, if everything else failed. There is a lot of security precautions that are taken for a president of the United States, and it doesn't really seem like Zelenskyy is taking all of those precautions, like the bulletproof glass. But then again, I guess they don't really have to worry about someone whipping out a rifle or a pistol in the middle of Poland as easily as they would elsewhere. But I bet you there is still security. So with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the last poll says Zelenskyy says that a military withdrawal is very possible in Bakhmut, but Ukraine still holds. And what are your thoughts? 53% said withdrawal is imminent. 25% said unsure, 9% said Ukraine will lose in Bakhmut, and 14% said Ukraine will never leave. And I'm still kind of shocked that a withdrawal hasn't happened yet, and Zelenskyy is saying that a withdrawal is very possible, and we've seen the fighting there really intensifying the last few days. I think a withdrawal is probably imminent, but it'll probably come at such a last-minute effort that I'm not sure if you really call it a withdrawal. It's more like they were forced out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they will retreat out of the town eventually. It's just going to become too difficult for them to hold, especially given the current situation with how the front lines are developing and the possible attack paths that the Russians will also be taking over the next few days. It seems as though a withdrawal from the city will most likely become imminent. And it also is good to hear that Zelenskyy is saying that Ukrainian troops will most likely get pulled out of the city now because it is getting into its final terminal stages where the town will fall. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and of course, we're hopping into our super chat questions, and the first one we have here is from Herd of Corgis, who puts in a $50 donation. Hey! And thank you very much for the support. And Herd of Corgis says, thanks for doing what you do with the dog behind it.
And thank you so much, Herd of Corgis, for enjoying what we do. I try my best, and of course, I thank you so much for the kind words. They mean a lot to us. They really do, because there's a decent amount of folks out there, as you all know, that don't like us, and they always make it their business to let us know they don't like us. And so we love to hear from the folks in the Lee Spring Army that they do enjoy the efforts that we do, and how much we put into it. We try our best. I mean, like, hell, today it was a pretty busy day. Had a little bit of free time in there, but then it was taken up with something else. But nonetheless, very busy days all the time. It's like never ending. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and enjoying what we do. That's what I do it for. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Santiago Flores, who puts in a $20 donation and says, good evening, and this is for the Whatever Fund, as usual. I sent this info to Enforcer Matt, and there is a ghost of Venezia, MiG-29 pilot call sign, Karaya Major Vadim Voroshilov, got 5 flying bombs in 1 sortie.
Wow, that's impressive. That is technically an ace, actually. If shooting down 5 air targets makes you an ace. So that guy really is a a legitimate ace, I think. I think the actual thing is that you have to shoot down a manned aircraft. But still, I would call that an ace, and that is really cool to hear that there actually is a real ghost, not a ghost of Kyiv, but a ghost of Vinnytsia. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Santiago, and also sharing that cool little fact with us. And also thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Of course, one thing I always have to mention to our viewers, because, you know, I don't know, you know, I feel like it may have been lost over time, why we call out viewers, because, you know, referencing back to something, I actually saw a lot of people say a good while ago, when, you know, the thing happened and we brushed over it really quickly, that this entire channel is focused on people giving us support. And that was actually something said by someone else as well, who, you know, was in the process of bashing us. The reason why we call out super chatters, and of course recognize them and thank them greatly, is because they're the only way we keep this channel running. And we never want anyone who's actually taken the, I guess you could say, taken the choice to support us, to ever go unmentioned and to ever go and feel like they weren't really thanked or appreciated a lot. Y'all help us to keep this thing running, like you, Santiago, and I gotta thank every single one of y'all so much for doing that. We call out the super chats, of course, because it's the only way we support this channel. We have no ads, we have no sponsors. The only thing that keeps us in between running and not running is the viewers themselves, and whether they decide if this channel is worth supporting or not, and by how much. Y'all get to decide that as well. You can decide whether it's $1 or anything you want. And I gotta thank y'all so much once again for always deciding that this channel is worthwhile and supporting us to help it to keep running. We try and make it as honest a business model as possible. You don't want to make it look like we are profiteering off the war, because I feel like running ads and having sponsors on YouTube, especially covering this kind of topic, feels like profiteering to a point, and I don't want to do that. So that's why, of course, we always let it fall on the viewers, whether you all support it or not. And of course, I got to thank everyone who always helps us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Santiago. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops, who says the Orc Defense Ministry building, once again proving, liar liar, pants on fire isn't just a saying.
And you are absolutely correct. Liar liar, pants on fire? You know, like the pants just explode. But still, thank you for the support. And that is true. The Russian Ministry of Defense has put out a lot of lies, and it appears that now it's burning down to the ground. You know, some Russian officer, this is probably what happened, Matthew. Sergei went into an office and said, "You know, I used to lay bricks before the war. What did you do?" And the soldier said, I was an honorable and intelligent officer. And then his pants just explode. And that's what caught the office on fire. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope we played on that joke fairly well. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And we have another one from Psyops. He puts in another $10 donation and says, please clap.
Please clap.
But Mr. Putin, if no one starts clapping, you can't kill the first one to stop.
That's true. That's very true. And I thank you so much for the support, of course, Psyops. And hoping this channel to keep on running. One thing I would have to say about that, to address that really quickly, is I think it's funny that you could see all of the macho-ness, that's the best way I can explain it with Putin, the macho-ness leave him once no one clapped. He immediately went to, like, some kid going, recognize me, please, please? You know, like, that was his look. Like, that's what he was doing. And it's really sad when you look at that, because you can tell, the guy's fragile. A fragile person, very fragile indeed. And that really shows you what the kind of people these are. I mean, like, hell, Hitler was like that as well. Really, all of the dictators are always like that. They always put on this tough man personality until something doesn't go their way and they're in a public setting, so they just can't have these people's heads cut off and chew them out. And then they sit there and go, hey, what's happening? Like, my power's slipping. You know, kind of like moderators on a Discord server. But anyways, with that,
you know, I was thinking about he should. You know how he likes to get on like horses and like take his shirt off and everything, and act all macho.
Yes,
he should have. Like, he looked so desperate. Like, after nobody was clapping, he should have like ripped his shirt off, jumped on Lavrov, and rode him back to his office.
Oh my god, dude, Lavrov looks like the glib go lob glob, the schwibble libble. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that thing. I don't know how to describe it.
Hang on. The glib glow Here we go. I found it. Hang on, let me go find a picture of it. So this is Lavrov right here, and if you pull up a picture of Lavrov,
Oh god.
I can hear it. I am the glip-go glop-glop, the shrivel-liver. It's literally him.
Man, I'm telling you, Lavrov could pass as the horse.
He could. Oh
He could.
my god. With a look
I
like
hate to
that,
say it, but he could.
man, with a look like that, that's rough. That's very rough. But oh my god! Now that I made that connection, I can't not stop thinking of him with the glip-go glob-glob. Like he looks like that thing. But anyways, with that, thank you for the support. And yeah, you know, Putin is always a tough guy until no one claps, and then he immediately breaks the persona and goes, "Please clap." And many of y'all know what I'm talking about. You know, of course, we don't get into politics here, but that was a really sad moment when you got to sit there and ask your supporters to clap. You know, like not getting into the policies or anything else. That's just sad. But anyways, with that,
Man, we're definitely on the Kremlin's kill list now. Definitely.
Oh yeah. I mean, like Lavrov was sitting out there going, we didn't attack them, they attacked us. You know, that's kind of like a line like someone else used when I thought about it, Matthew. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And also, thank you
Alright,
once
yeah.
again for the support, Psyops.
Yes, and big thanks for the support. And up next, we have a $100 super chat from none other than Magic Skygirl.
Holy
And
moly.
thank you very much for that. Magic Skygirl says, first, half of this is on behalf of my Aussie friends in the chat. Second, we need a Mr. Corgi plushie wearing LSA t-shirt in the merch store and blame Alabama Cajun.
And thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Magic Skygirl. That is huge. And we're like, I say this a lot, we're always blown away. I don't think we ever cease to be blown away. We are blown away by your support, and I gotta thank you so much. You're helping this channel to keep on running. You're helping the lights to keep on flickering above my head. I'll eventually get that light bulb replaced. But I gotta thank you so much for the support. And also, on the behalf of your Aussie friends, there are so many Australians and New Zealanders who watch this channel that are not able to support the fundraisers specifically because there's a law that in Australia and New Zealand that forbids them from doing that. And also super chatting as well. Apparently there is a decent amount of Australians that cannot super chat for some reason. I think that may be more of a locality issue within Australia. I don't know how their governmental system works because we do get donations from, well, not donations, super chats from Australians occasionally, but we don't see it a lot. It's somewhat rare as far as I can think, but still, I would say a Mr. Corgi merch idea, not a bad idea. I'll actually tell y'all something that I've been thinking about in the background. It's just that we haven't put it into motion. Many of y'all may know World War I propaganda posters. That's when a British person takes a good look at something. It's called a propaganda. But anyways, there are these really cool posters that came from the First World War and the Second World War that I thought were really neat, and we could probably have a little bit changed about them to make them Lee Spring Army posters. Like this one for Sunday night fundraisers. Lend your 5 shillings to your country and crush the Russians. And then change this guy out to be like a Russian with a white armband or something. I mean, I think that'd be really neat, you know, really promote the Sunday fundraisers. And we probably weren't going to make these, well, we were going to make merch runs of them, limited edition, of course, but we were probably going to make permanent, like wallpapers for your computer background and your phone background and stuff like that, that y'all could just use. And also on your like Twitter profiles and stuff like that. Because I thought it would be really neat to do something like that. I think these posters are always really neat, really cool, and I'm a sucker for these things. Like, I'm telling you, I love these kinds of posters. They're just neat. Like this one right here. There is still a place for you in the line for you. Will you fill it? And then put this space is reserved for the LSA or something on like that on it, and then switch out all of these guys to be little enforcers with gas masks. Like, I think that would be really cool. But a Mr. Corgi plushie. Come on, you're speaking my language. I would love to do plushies. I don't know if Teespring does plushies though. Do they, Matthew?
They don't.
Dang it.
No, they don't. But I do know that we do have Corgi plushies from somewhere. I can't remember where we got them from.
Britain.
But you could, yeah, I think it was actually. But you could put like a bandana with LSA on it and wrap it around the plushie. Maybe that would work. Oh, look at these! Look at these fat corgis.
Look at these! These things are, man. That's Sheba right there. Oh, a little Sheba, little baby.
Hey, it's even got the legs out the back. Like
yeah, sploofing. Oh man, these are cute. You know, we could drop ship these. I'm just kidding. We're not drop shipping them, but I mean, like, not bad.
Man, that corgi right there looks like a rug or a fox or something. That one right there on the right.
This one?
Yeah.
Dude, that looks like Mr. Corgi, honestly. Like when he's like tired and wants to be left alone, and he's like hanging out in the
Yeah.
corner. That looks like him. But I love these. I love corgis. I love them till the day I'll die. The corgis are my favorite dogs now after we got them. I love them to bits. And so many of y'all, Psyops of course started this. It's all Psyops' fault, but everyone wants to see the corgis again. We'll find a way to show them to y'all. And we should be able to do something like that soon, because college is ending, so the semester is finally rounding out. We'll be graduating and moving on to law school in the fall. So we'll have a whole summer of free time outside of the stream to make videos, to try and make more limited edition merch runs, all that kind of stuff. I mean, like, hell, really, to be honest with y'all, Matthew and me are like running on fumes right now, especially me at the end of the semester, because college and the stream are like eating everything in terms of time. Like if it's not the stream, it's college, and if it's not either of them, I usually only have a very small amount of free time. So we haven't really been able to get around to a lot extra like we were hoping we would be able to at this point. But maybe we will get around to doing some cool stuff like wallpapers for computers and backgrounds for phones and profile pictures that all of y'all can use, limited edition merch runs. Sadly, we can't do corgi plushies through Teespring, but maybe we'll find a way. If there is a will, there is a way. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Magic Sky Girl, the massive amount of support, the largest super chat of the night, actually. And I got to thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you do help us to keep the gears rolling. And I think that's, like, you know, I don't know what it is with people, because here's the thing. Some people sit there and go, and, you know, and I'm gonna really quick talk about the haters, because I don't understand the logic here with this. It's not that, like, they're bugging me or anything, I just don't get the logic. It's failing me. They sit there and say, this channel is all about money, but if that was the case, I'd be running ads and have a sponsor. The reason why we call out super chats is because we want to thank the individuals, the specific people who are keeping this channel alive. I don't know why no one makes that connection, because it's like, if we were entirely about monetary things, we wouldn't have had a schism with the moderators, because one of them actually supported us on Patreon. You know, I just thought about that, Matthew. They actually deleted their Patreon subscription, and I was like, you know, folks were saying we were doing things because Psyops supports the channel. I mean, like, hell, one of the moderators supported this channel. It still didn't make what they did right. And I don't care if people support this channel or not. If people are doing something wrong, like abusing our viewers and treating people poorly, which we're not into, like, hell, I'm gonna call them out, because I'm not gonna sit there and let people just be rude to folks. Like, that's just uncalled for. Like, if anyone's representing me or the Lee Spring Army, except for Matthew, if you mess with Matthew, you're getting teeth. But like, that's serious
Sadly,
business.
it's true.
Yeah. But if you're sitting there and you're a part of the Lee Spring Army and you're full on representing my wishes and interests, you're never going to cuss anyone out unless if it's the last resort and it's called for. You know, and if you want to misabuse your powers and you want to support people who misabuse powers and start lying about us about things, then I don't care about your support. I'd rather be doing what's right. That's honestly my opinion on it. But still, thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support, Magic Sky Girl, and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So up next, we have a super chat question from David L. And he puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, David, for that. He says, thoughts on the alleged Russian FSO officer who defected.
We did hear about that FSO officer in passing. I don't really think much of it at the moment, because it appears that he hasn't divulged any sensitive or important information. But once again, that may be withheld from the public if he does that. So right now, I don't really think too much of it, but we will be keeping on top of that, at least behind the scenes, to see if it's worth reporting or not in the future. So with that, I hope that addresses the question the best I can, at least from the situation we're looking at right now. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this thing to keep on rolling. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bob Anon, who puts in a $10 donation and says, do you think the Russians refusing to clap for Putin was a group decision by those present, and to send a message that he's done and will soon be removed from office?
Ooh, if they did that, I mean, like, hell, I could really honestly see them all finding Windows soon. You know, like, because Putin will not have that kind of, well, then again, it's a whole group, so having them all killed would seem really weird. But he may just kill one of them to set an example and put the rest of them in line again. Because you got to remember, it only, like, historically, it only really takes killing one person out of a group of dissenters to set an example and put the rest of them in line through fear. So they may not have to throw all of them out of a window. They may just throw one of them out of a window that is right on the nose as they did assassinate that person to send a message to the rest of them. You better clap next time I come up there. So it may be that they were trying to signal that. It may backfire on them, or it may actually be ushering in the final weeks or months of Putin. Although we've said that a couple of times during the war, and it hasn't happened yet. So I'm kind of on the fence whether that really will happen at all during the war, or if the war will have to completely collapse and end for that to happen, or if it'll ever happen at all. But that would be my opinion on that right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Cliff H. And he has a new call sign for me this week. He says, Enforcer Matt is Rumpelstiltskin. I'm not sure if Rumpelstiltskin will be okay with that, but interesting. I have to say, I'm quite fond of the Executioner. That's a good one. And also, I can't remember what the other one was that people were using for a little while, but maybe the Enforcer remembers.
Sadly, I don't, Matthew, but you know what I was thinking? Is Rumpelstiltskin is the legit representation of a used car salesman.
Oh, the real one?
No, I'm talking about the one from Shrek where he's going, come on, sign it! You know, like his toes come out of his shoes. Like, that's how they're like when they're trying to sell you a car that's like a lemon. They're like, come on, sign it. You know, like, I was like, really, that's a used car salesman. But anyways, with that, Matthew got a new name this week. Will it stick? Will it not? Let us know. I would be very interested to know. And so with that, we are moving on to the next one. But real quick, I actually just remembered something about the little propaganda posters I was talking about a while ago. We were actually wanting to make them thematic because we know that we have a lot of veterans in here and a lot of folks who are not necessarily a part of the Lee Spring Army. All of y'all are a part of the Lee Spring Army, technically, but there are, like, branches now that have been made, like the Lee Spring Navy, the LSN, the Lee Spring Marine Corps, the LSMC, and the Lee Spring Air Force, to add on to the Lee Spring Army. All of it, of course, falls under the umbrella of the Lee Spring Army, but we were wanting to make special little posters and backgrounds and profile pictures and stuff and symbols, so that way the Lee Spring Army is a real thing on the internet as a community, but y'all could differentiate yourselves if y'all wanted to be a part of the LSMC or the LSN or the LSAF or the LSA. I thought it'd be really cool, but share with us what y'all think, because most of the wallpaper stuff, like the merch things, of course, those can't be free, but if we made the designs, we would also make wallpapers and things like that y'all could use on the internet, just to show that you're a part of the LSA, kind of like the NAFO fellas have the little Doge dogs. But with that, I hope I run that through the circle real quick when you get an answer back from y'all. And with that, oh yeah, and Super Action General said Leaf Spring Coast Guard. Why not? Yeah, I think that would be cool. And, you know, and then if we get, like, a huge demand of things, you know, to branch on further, we can make, like, Lee Spring tankers. Like, you know, Jesus UCSB is an LSA tanker. We can make little posters for the Lee Spring Army Tanker Corps. You know, we could do all kinds of cool stuff. It could be endless. But I would really like to try and make the Lee Spring Army a solidified community. Like, we really are solidified. We were described as cult-like by someone a while ago, and so I would like to make it more visible, where people are like, oh, look, these people, like, you know, folks are in NAFO, these people are a part of the LSA, because I think that would be really neat, and also it would, you know, it would easily spread the word of what the Lee Spring Army is, who we are, and what we do. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Richard Philpott, and he says, do you think that... Now that one, I'm not really sure how that will go over if we read that off. So let me send that to the enforcer and make sure first.
I didn't notice that you deleted some guy who was going in crazy in the live chat over crack. I didn't ever see
crack
that.
Something.
He's like, you put it in a spoon, you heat it up. It's like, this isn't the place for that, man. But let me go.
I was trying not to laugh at that.
I know, I saw that and I was like, I had to mention that because that's just hilarious. But let's see. Ooh, no, we can't answer that one. That's a little too spicy for us, but I thank you for the support, Richard Philpott. I would answer the question, but that one is a little spicy, a little too spicy. But with that, thank you for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. Leaf Spring Army, well, the Leaf Spring Space Force, the LSSP, would be a really cool thing to get into as well. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Mace, who says, Slava Ukraine. And I really don't have anything else to say at this point. You guys keep positive and keep it up. Chugga chugga and choo choo.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Mace. And also, Slava Ukraini. And it's fine not to have much to say. I'm just happy that you put something in the super chat, though, so that way we can, talk to you for a minute. And also, I've got to thank you, Mace, for having our back and sticking it through with us during the schism. Mace was actually a moderator on our Discord servers before they were shut down, and he actually was a real one and stuck it through with us. So I got to thank you so much for that, because some others didn't really do that too well, and, not to touch on this too much, but we've actually been told, and I'm not sure if this information is perfectly accurate, but we're still looking around at it and trying to verify it. But it appears that a certain channel that blasted us actually had moderators infiltrate our mod team and then start causing problems. And apparently, from what we've been told, they're now threatening people who are starting to call them out and then tell me about it. So fairly interesting on that. We'll be keeping an eye on that. But yeah, that's a little bit of a scoop right now, just in case if anyone was sitting there going, "Oh, what?" No, it's not what you think. If I sat here and broke it down, which we're not, it's a whole different story. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And so I noticed that some of y'all saw it earlier, but we're not the only ones having a problem with moderators. It looked like Denny's was also having a problem earlier. Somebody had apparently gone and made Twitter posts and Telegram posts without his consent, and he had to come back and put them in line, it looked like. So apparently he's having a little trouble too. I guess it's something with the season or in the air or the water.
Or, it might be, it might be something else because, what's interesting, Matthew, is that a certain message that was sent out by a certain someone, once again, let me say this real quick. No, we're not calling them out because we're scared the viewers are going to go over there. It's like watching paint dry. What we're scared of is that if we call them out like he wants us to do, he's going to sit there and say that we're sticking our viewers on him to harass him, and then he'll try and have us reported. We wouldn't do that. Although it is against YouTube community guidelines for him to do what he's been doing to us for months on end, we wouldn't do that to him. But he's more than happy to do anything, really. And honestly, considering the information we've been getting, of course, can't confirm it, it may be a general theme that a certain someone out there thinks that if they're able to just destroy everyone else or discredit them heavily, they may actually get some viewers. Because it seems as though the story we're getting right now, we still can't confirm it, though, seems like that might be the case. Speaking of which, has OZ Jeff Gray been in the chat tonight? Because we did make him a priority user.
Wait a minute, hold on, let me get the name right. He is OZ Quokka now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's back.
Well, welcome back, OZ Jeff Gray. Now OZ Quokka. And it's good to have you here. But yes, with the also another interesting thing I heard today is that Dennis actually provided Starsky's unit, the 4th Brigade, with a decent amount of drones, which I thought was really neat. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because I actually interviewed Starsky off stream for a paper that I'm doing in college. But I was like, hey, that's not bad. That's really nice. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, take a live chat question. And of course we will, CK Bold, and thank you very much for your support once again. And the live chat question sponsored by CK Bold goes to Cody Griffith, who says, Enforcer, could you tell us a timetable on Putin being ousted now that NATO is stronger?
That's a tough one, because I always say I'm not a big fan
Let's check the schedule real quick.
Yeah, let's check the calendar real quick. Let me pop up my phone. Let's see, I got him for May 9th, Victory Day. Just take him out in front of the tanks rolling down the square. Let him get run over a couple of times. He'll blend in with the cobbles. I'm just kidding. But anyways, we don't try and crystal ball much. Crystal balling is one way to make yourself look like an idiot about 6-7 months in the future, because almost always crystal balling goes wrong. So I really can't give you a time frame, but I have a feeling it will probably be after the war. In my honest opinion, nothing's really thrown them out yet. There's been a lot of embarrassments, mistakes, and absolute disasters that the Russians have pulled off in this war, and nothing's gotten rid of them yet. And so I feel like it would have to be after the war, when the Russian economy is in shambles, and they also, the national will is incredibly low because they were defeated. He'll probably be looked at as a very unpopular figure and finally ousted. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have here is from Hal Rose, who puts in a $50 donation and says, Enforcer, you're looking at events from the wrong perspective. Your super chats show our gratitude, and it's not about the money.
And I thank you for the support, Hal Rose. And you are correct. It does show gratitude. And that's kind of a thing, you know, like no, it's not really. I'm trying to sit here and figure out how to word this, because, you know, with super chats and how people sit there and view them, it's kind of weird because a lot of people on YouTube, they make their money in a hidden way. And we're really the only channel that does not make our money in a hidden way. Y'all pretty much see exactly what we make each night off of super chats. And of course, it's not real. It is about the money a little bit because, of course, we have to support ourselves to pay for college and to, you know, eat and, you know, of course, pay for our car and all that stuff, you know, and insurance and everything. That is a part of it. But when people send in massive super chats, I guess that just shows how appreciative they are of the channel. But then again, that makes it, I don't like how that sounds either, because then it does make it sound like the only way to show gratitude for this channel is to throw in a super chat. And I'm just more than happy to hear folks say that they love the channel. I mean, like, whenever I see that in the live chat, I'm happy as punch. You know, like when Super Action General or Trister, and, you know, Trister is a supporter, but when he says y'all are doing great, we just like that. It makes us feel good, makes us feel like we're doing something worthwhile, and we like it. But still, I gotta thank you so much once again for the support, Hal. And it is about the gratitude, I guess, in a way. But that's one. But getting back to something I forgot to really cover well. A lot of people on YouTube make their money in a hidden way. Like when you see a sponsor, I'll tell you this, with a video making about 50,000 views, a sponsor is most likely paying somewhere around $1,000 to have a sponsorship on a video. So whenever you see a sponsorship and a video or a channel is averaging about 50,000 views per video, that person is making $1,000 every time they have a sponsorship up. Or if they're running ads and a video gets like 50,000 views, that really depends on the view duration and everything and how long they watch the ads. But you can make anywhere in between like $50 and like maybe $200. So a lot of people out there, they run ads and they run sponsorships, and no one ever sees the amount of money they're making, although they're making way more than we would through super chats. But I feel like that's profiteering. I really do. Because you're saying
you know, one thing I've been seeing some folks say, I heard a few of the hater folks say it, and also some people are legitimately asking. They're saying, well, don't y'all live at home? Well, yeah, I don't know what kind of parents y'all had, but it's not free to live at home, especially when you're 22 and 21. It is not free, and there's still bills to pay. Yes. Y'all must have had very generous parents.
we pay a rent to be in this house, so in a way, keeping the lights on. I mean, like it's a figurative thing, but if we're not paying rent to be in this house, we're not going to be living under these lights that are on right now. So I guess that's a better way to put it. But yes, you know, we have to sit there and we have to make sure that we can support ourselves to do this thing, because we do this as a full-time job. You know, I do this like 60 hours a week. Matthew does like 40 hours a week, I think. Like we put in a massive effort into this thing, and we couldn't do anything else to support this thing unless we wanted to drop it entirely. And and like that's why we're so appreciative of folks who support the channel, because we don't have it supported any other way. It would be so easy, you know, because so many people have done it and no one really even bats an eye at it. It would be so easy for us to turn on ads, to get sponsors, because we just got another sponsorship offer today. I'm not going to name the company, but we got one. It would be incredibly easy for us to do that. But that is, to me, profiteering. Y'all get to decide whether y'all support us or not. Y'all are the ones who decide through y'all support whether we'll exist in a month or so, you know, still. And I think that's a better way of running it, because then y'all get to decide whether it's worth running it or not. And y'all get to decide where your money goes. I don't sit there and, you know, kind of like mysteriously proportion the money like Vasquez did in Ripley's Heroes. Y'all know exactly where it's going. Sunday fundraisers are fundraisers. Every other day, you can support the channel, or you can not, or you can wait for a Sunday fundraiser, or you can support us and not support the fundraiser. Although I don't like that. I'd really like you to support the fundraisers, but yeah, not to go through a whole spiel about this thing, but it really disheartens me that we try and make the way this channel runs as honest as possible and as transparent as possible, and we seem to get bashed more so than the people who monetize everything about it. And so with that, we're on to the next one. But I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to go over that long, but I thought I would kind of like try and cover the base again, because we haven't covered it in so long that some people sit there and think, oh, they're all about the money. It's like, no, if I was, you would be watching an ad when you're getting on the stream, because it would make me like an extra $70 probably. And it's like, no, we're not into that. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat. Actually, I believe this is once again, and yes, it is the second one from David L. He puts in a $10 donation and says, I always try to tune into your shows. It seems a few of my donations this past weekend were denied for repetitive charges by my bank. I think I have it solved. And take a live chat question.
And thank you for the support. I see a lot of people saying they actually want to show up to our graduation. That's going to be a decision that we might have to think over very carefully. Because if y'all show up, cool, all amount may show up. Obviously we would have to list where it is and everything. But
also, Bliat Man might show up too.
We might get a little statuette on the stage or something. Might want to be a little careful with that.
We have an extra special gift for these graduates.
Yeah, we have very special gift for you, straight from Frontline. Oh, what is it? Hand grenade.
Presidential award for presidential grades.
Yeah, something like that. But reread the line. I forgot it now. We had too much fun.
He says, I always try to tune into your shows, and it seems a few of my donations were denied by my bank.
Okay.
And I think it's solved.
Well, I thank you for the support. And I thank you for helping the channel keep on running. I actually had a bank one time. This is crazy. For some reason, my bank hates my iPhone doing any kind of purchases, because they are always sitting there going, "This isn't verified. Contact your bank." And I'm like, "Why? It's like it's on my phone. Like it's been verified before. Why is it unverified now?" That is annoying to me. I understand what you went through there, and I hate when banks do that. But then again, it's most likely for anti-fraud. But then again, your bank account can be sucked dry by a scammer, and then they won't pick that up, but they'll pick you up trying to buy a $3 Sprite from the store, because apparently Sprite being $3 is a little too expensive. But anyway.
Man, I hate when you show up to the bank and they don't have your money.
Oh, I hate that too. I really do.
That sucks.
You go to the bank. I'd like to withdraw some of my money. Sorry, we don't actually have that in cash here in the bank right now. It's like, excuse me? It's like, what the hell do you mean? Put your money in a sock, guys. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support, and I hope we addressed that fairly well.
All right, and up next, big shout out to Brian Patterson for putting in a $5 super chat. And thank you very much, Brian, for the support, and we do appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says, getting baited into frustration. Sad. Going down rabbit holes instead. Great. Hopefully my super chat doesn't kill your internet like last night.
And thank you for the support. No, it hasn't yet. Hopefully it won't. But I gotta thank you for that support. And yes, being baited, not great. Love rabbit holes, though. I love rabbit holes. Who the hell doesn't like a rabbit hole? One thing about Zelensky's speech, speaking of a quick rabbit hole I wanted to cover earlier, one thing that was really cool about Zelensky's speech is that he actually talked about John Paul II, who was a pope in the Roman Catholic Church back in the Cold War, back during the 70s, and so during that time. He was actually Polish, which caused a huge uproar when he was elected as the Pope, because the Polish government at that time was communist, and so they had state-sponsored atheism. And so having a Pole representing the Roman Catholic Church was considered a shame for the Poles. But they actually allowed him to travel back into Poland, and while he was there, they actually allowed him to say something that would be detrimental to the survival of communist Poland. He said in a speech, the people and the Catholics of Poland need to unite together to create a group that can negotiate and be in parity with the government. And so that created a movement in Poland called Solidarity. And Solidarity became so strong so quickly in Poland that the Polish communist government could really do nothing unless if they negotiated with Solidarity. Solidarity would call strikes. They would do all kinds of stuff. They really were the ones who held power in Poland for the last few decades of its existence, and a large part of why Poland is the way it is today. Instead of having a violent transfer from communism to democracy, they actually just had a shift in the government where Solidarity actually took control and then said, we're going to have a democratic election. And that's how the Polish Republic fell. It's a very interesting story. Poland is a very neat, I guess you could say, Warsaw Pact Soviet country. And if you've never looked into their Soviet history, I really would. It's one of the most interesting and one of the weirdest. It's way out of the norm for most Warsaw Pact republics. But with that, I hope you enjoyed that rabbit hole, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one we have is from Craig Platel, and he puts in a $5 donation and says, it's not just about John Deere, or excuse me, it's not just John Deere, it's all electronics. And look up the Right to Repair movement, congressional hearings, and Louis Rossman blog on subject.
Let's see here. We'll pull one up real quick. Tractor maker John Deere has agreed to give its customers the right to fix their own equipment. Previously, farmers were allowed to use authorized parts and service facilities rather than cheaper independent repair options. Deere & Company is one of the world's largest farming equipment. That was actually a decision made on January 9th of 2023, according to the BBC. So it looks like the U.S. farmers actually did win the battle already and were able to secure their right to repair again on their own. That's great for them, because if y'all didn't know, because I watched a little bit of a documentary about it, and, you know, of course, I'm not entirely versed on it. I only watched like a 30-minute documentary on this thing. The farmers were getting gouged by John Deere because usually they take it to like a mom and pop repair shop and they'd be able to do it for fairly cheap. But John Deere was charging such high prices, and considering they had a monopoly to repair these tractors, they could really charge whatever. And so the prices were beginning to skyrocket, and farmers were going broke just trying to repair their tractors. It was a serious concern at the time. It looks like it's already been overcome just this year, and it's great to know that the American farmers won the battle and are able to keep the price of repairing their tractors a little bit lower than it was. Well, actually, a considerable bit lower than it was, at least according to the documentary I used to watch. But thank you so much for the support and also talking about the right to repair a little bit. And I will try and look into that a little bit more off stream. But with that, thank you once again. I hope we addressed that. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation and says, so we have decided to streak at the Enforcer graduation.
Oh, no.
Okay, remember to put LSA on something. I'm not sure what that means. We're going to refrain from that part. Could you look up the something water tower? I'm going to send that over to you because that's a weird spelling on that.
Let's see. It's the Slanty. Let's see. Let me just type this in all the way. Water tower. Here we go. Apparently it's a point of curiosity. Wow, this thing looks like a fortress. I don't know what this thing is supposed to be. It's very bizarre.
I'm not sure if there's water in that tower.
I don't know. Maybe there is, but that is one of the most artistic-looking water towers I've ever seen. It looks really, actually, better than the normal ones. It kind of just looks like...
What are all those antennas doing on top of it, though?
Hey, wait a minute. That's like an observation post. What the hell is a water?
Is this really a water tower?
Is this really a water tower, or is this the way the government controls the minds of the people? Let's go to the reviews. The best place to be. This water tower saved my glasses. 11 out of 10 water tower. The bushes around the base are well trimmed. The tower was designed... That sounded so wrong. I don't know what the hell was wrong with that one. Anyways,
what do you mean by that?
Let's see. The tower was designed by William R. Coates and built as part of an elaborate city waterworks project that began in 1889. Located on the highest point in this town, which I still can't pronounce, the tower was built in 1890 at a cost of $21,435.63, equivalent to about $578,000 in 2020, or about the cost of a BMP-1. So, not expensive at all to build a water tower like that. And what is this?
This right here is the inspiration for Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it? It is. Yep. It's exactly like that. But you know, Matthew, I wonder who said back in the day, you know, to make our city look better, we should design this thing to look like phallic. And then someone went, exactly, my boy, let's build it. Oh, man.
Also, the flag of Finland right there on the right.
Honestly, that looks like the flag of Greece. Is it?
I don't know what that's for, but it
Wait,
doesn't look
yeah,
like it
yeah, it
belongs.
is the flag of Greece. It says heroically
Oh.
fought during the War of Independence of Greece, and that's a Greek flag. I
Oh,
don't know
that's
how.
cool.
I don't know how in the hell I recognized it. You can hardly see the flag, but I went, "That's Greece," and I was right. But anyways, that's bizarre, man. Like, so apparently, oh, this guy is the town is apparently named after a Greek general who fought in the Greek War of Independence in 1838 and secured the nation's independence. So that's what this monument's for, and I guess the water tower is associated with that, maybe. But then again, well, I guess they're just saying that this guy had a massive dong to take on the Turks like they did. I don't know, but golly, are you okay, dude? Your lungs just got blown out. It wasn't even 9mm. It was just a sneeze. But still,
It blows the lung out the body. Very dangerous.
blows the lung right out of the body.
Oh, I gotta tell you, that's
Oh.
terrible. That's terrible business. But you know what's even worse?
Take it easy, fella. You can blow the lung out the body.
Oh,
That's terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. It
He
wasn't
said,
that
yeah.
bad.
No, he said it the truth the first time.
Oh my god, dude. All right, we're on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support, Sives, and I hope we addressed that fairly well.
And the next one we have is from Yuri Bench, who puts in a $10 donation and doesn't leave a comment. But Yuri Bench is our viewer from Israel, and be safe over there. It's still a little rowdy, but thank you very much for the support and helping to keep the lights on.
Yeah,
and
man,
yes,
that's putting it lightly over there. Right now at least. I mean, like, it's gotten really warm in that area due to a million things. I mean, like, there's about maybe 3 separate things I can think of going on in that area right now. But thank you for the support, Yuri, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope you are safe. As far as I understand, you are in Tel Aviv, which I would believe to be perhaps one of the safest areas in Israel. I don't really know Israel well, though, so correct me if I'm wrong. But hopefully you're safe, and hopefully that is the safest area, and you were there. And what are you laughing at, man? What is going on?
oh my goodness. Man, I went through all the stages of sneeze, a hiccup, trying to imitate some politicians.
Oh man, dude, at least you didn't do that whole thing. Yes, we're going to build more prisons. You know, like at least you didn't do that.
Yeah.
It could have been worse. But and you know, one thing that's funny, Matthew. Another thing, I gotta say this because I find this funny. People sit there and go, you know, people sit there who are haters, and I've seen them say everything. I've seen them say that we're party A and party B, and I find it hilarious that even at this point, although people try and peg us like as a political party, they still can't. Like I'm sitting
They
there,
still can't
like,
do
yeah,
it.
because you know some of them will sit there and say, "Oh, he riffed on so and so, therefore he's the opposite." But they say it on both of them, you know, like both. What happened? And it's gonna be great. It's gonna be huge. Like they've only heard us make fun of one or the other, so they assume we're the opposite. I gotta say we're doing a great job at keeping this thing neutral, really, and also no politics. By the way, I know I mentioned that for a second. Let's not get into political arguments in the chat. But with that, we are on to
No
the
politics,
next one.
But anyways, up next we have a $5 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says, "Ever seen a corgi/husky mix, and husky stays corgi size?"
I
And
have
that's very
seen,
interesting.
I have seen a corgi husky mix back in the day. Mixing corgis with things was a big deal, and you can see these little. Let's see, what should we call these? Well, that just sounds wrong. I don't know what to call. Corgi husky is the best thing to call it because I was trying to blend the two words, and everything I was coming up with in my head was terrible. But that is a corgi husky. It has the shape of a corgi, but the look of a husky. Very cute. I love them. Another dog that I really like. Say what?
Go ahead.
Another dog that I really like, and I really want one of these. It's a Swedish Valhund, which is actually the ancestor of the corgi. This thing would travel to Wales on Viking longboats with the Vikings back when they were raiding England and Wales, and it would end up. We don't really know how, but it bred with some kind of other dog that we don't really know what it was, but it did end up creating the corgis we know, the Cardigan Welsh Corgi and the Pembroke Welsh Corgi. But these things are cute and precious. They look like wolf corgis. Very sweet, and I like them a lot. Apparently these things' genetics, Matthew, are really strong because everything that ever has like a part of its DNA in it always ends up that same shape.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, I just wonder how this happened, though.
Dude, this one looks like it just clocked out of work, and then the manager came up and told him it has to clean a bathroom. He's like, that's not my job, man. I just clocked out.
Man's kind of got that like mischievous kind of like husky look going on, but it's a Valhund.
It kind of does. Look at this one, man. This one's going for it.
Yeah, that's what I want to know, Trester. He said, how's that mix happen? That definitely wasn't natural, I can tell you that.
It definitely wasn't natural. I mean, well, I can't make that joke. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support. And we have seen that, and I love the Corgi Husky mix. I was about to blend the two words together. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from something, Slava something, who says, Privyet, from your favorite Russian, Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. And interestingly enough, some of y'all may not know the story of Slava right there. Slava, well, I don't want to say the other part because I don't know. But anyways, he is actually a Russian, apparently still inside of Russia right now. And he's traveled the internet. And over time, he actually went from being a pro-Russian to a pro-Ukrainian after seeing what Russia has done. And so he's actually ended up here because apparently everywhere else he's gone, he's been treated badly. So, you know, one thing I always say, so as long as you're pro-Ukrainian, doesn't matter who you are, what you stand for, I'm happy to have you here. I'm happy to have everyone a part of the Lee Spring Army, and it's great to know that we actually have some Russians in here, along with everyone else in the world that supports Ukraine and watches this news. And so thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and it's good to have you in the Lee Spring Army, a very unique member for sure. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Dupper Bob, who puts in a $2 donation and says, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much once again for the support, and of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Mank, two-wheeler, who puts in a $2 donation and says, if that's a kettle, I'm a unicorn, F the RF.
I had to sit there and think about that for a minute. I was like, oh, what is that? Okay, well, if that was a kettle, then you are a unicorn. But I'm just kidding with you. Thank you for the support. And I would have to agree with you. It's probably not a kettle. It's probably something deliberate. Or it may have been accidental, but it probably wasn't a kettle. And so with that, I thank you for the support. Hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. But before we do, I actually have to get to a live chat early. Bilbo Jenkins said, check out a Czechoslovakian wolf dog. A Czechoslovakian wolf. It's actually the first thing that pops up. Oh, this thing's beautiful. Wow, look at that. It looks like a wolf.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello there. But I like this thing. Wow, this thing is beautiful. I wonder how much they are. I bet they're expensive.
Man, those things are like very akin to wolf. Like, they don't look very domesticated.
No, they don't at all. I think that may be why they're called a wolf dog, is because they look so much like a wolf. But, man, what a dog. I mean, I don't know if this really is a dog. I mean, this thing looks more like a Eurasian timber wolf than it does any dog. But, wow, I mean, what a sight. I didn't know dogs like these existed. I mean, man, look,
wow.
Look at that thing. Goodness. Dude, I want one of these things. I don't know.
Oh, it's eating a snack.
Oh yeah, it's eating a snack. I don't know how well this thing would vibe with corgis. I feel like corgis make friends out of anything. And I mean, like, this would be a very good bodyguard for the dogs, Matthew. like Shiva sits there and goes, stick 'em, and then this thing just goes and kills whatever it is.
I think it's sick 'em. I don't think it's stick 'em.
well, stick 'em up. It's robbery. But I like. We got a furry here. No, we're moving on. We're moving on. We didn't see that. Oh goodness. Oh my. But look at that thing. That's a nice dog. How much did these? I gotta pull this up though. I gotta figure out how much they cost. Cost. Not in the images. Not in the images. Between $800 to $1,500. So it actually is cheaper than a corgi.
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah, because corgis like corgis are precious, but man, are they like expensive. I mean, like, they're very expensive dogs to get. So if you want to build up a horde of corgis, you better be like a millionaire or something, because you can only get like 1 or 2 of them before you break in the bank. But you can actually get a couple of these things and terrorize your neighborhood with them and probably get a very high insurance premium too. But anyways, I love these dogs. They're beautiful. And thank you for sharing that with us, Bilbo. That is really neat. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Alberto Escobar. Excuse me. And no comments, sadly, but Alberto, thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much, Alberto Escobar, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that that parrot continues to fly through the sky, because with those kinds of aerodynamics, it must be pretty rough and take a lot of energy. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and, well, really the support fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Raphael Harris, who puts in a $2 donation and says, Leaf Springs, Mr. Lunchtime, Honey Badger, Rabbit Holes.
And thank you for the support. And those are some things that identify in this channel are the Leaf Spring Army, the rabbit holes, and everything else in between. I mean, like, there's so many things. Like, the Leaf Spring Army culture is so extensive, and the history of the Leaf Spring Army is so extensive as well. It goes on for ages. It goes on forever. Like, really, I can't even remember everything now. But there are some viewers that I would call Leaf Spring Army historians that have dedicated a lot of their time into accounting and collecting the history and the stories of the Leaf Spring Army, which I think is really great and a great service on their end. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Craig Platel once again. And he puts in a $2 donation and says, you forget about the Chaparral for U.S. air defense.
And you're absolutely right. And I made a big goof. I actually forgot about a couple of things. One, I forgot about the Hawk, the Hawk Sam right here. Forgot about this thing. And I also forgot about the Chaparral. The Chaparral biome. Who in the hell cares about biomes? We care about weapons. Anyways, let me go to the Chaparral. Here's a Chaparral. I never liked the way these things looked, and it really just carried AIM 9s, you know, like normal AIM 9s that would be mounted onto a plane, but I think they got a different designation on the Chaparral. The MIM 72As, that's what they were called. You can see it right there on that little YouTube thumbnail from Maximus, which is a neat channel. But yeah, I did forget about this thing, and I also forgot about the Hawk. But we didn't really go into this research and development for SAM systems, even then having like a complete set of things as extensively as the Russians did, because the Russians had to count on surface-to-air missile defense systems to overcome the numbers advantage that the U.S. Air Force would have over them. And that was really the only way they could do it. But you have a good point. I completely forgot about the Chaparral, and I also forgot about this Hawk too, just to beat myself a little bit more. So real quick, Matty, I'm going to insert my foot into my mouth because I got that wrong. And while I do that, I'm going to be moving on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support.
You know, it's actually a disease, you know, foot and mouth disease.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Oh, no. I got it, doctor? How long will I live, doctor?
Well, if you just take your foot right out of your mouth, it'll be all over.
Walter, I got the... But anyways, with that, we are on to the next. We're on
all
to the
right.
next for real this time.
And our next one goes to Alberto Escobar once again, who puts in a $20 donation and says, Alberto E. Zajarov is my name, from Coral Gables, Miami, Florida.
Coral Gables. Let me get out my Google Maps again. Ukraine. Country in Europa. And we'll go to the country in Europa, and then we'll type in, let me make sure I get this right, Coral Gables. Coral Gables. In Florida. This appears to be South Miami. So let's take a look at this place. We got the Baker Homestead. We got Cocoa Plum. We've got Gables Estates. We've got Old Cutlery. We also have Hammock Oaks and hammocks. No hammocks to be found here, but hammocks nonetheless. And also Biscayne Bay View and a Publix. Oh, God bless Mr. George. But let's drop down in Street View and see what this place looks like. Oh, wow, this is actually really nice. Let's see, let's drive down here. Man, the beaches always look nice in America. I don't know what it is, but they're always like these neat, quaint little places. I really like this place. It's nice.
This has got to be expensive.
Oh, has to be expensive, like millions maybe. Well above.
I think that that guy who goes around, saying we the best. He lives around here somewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Matthew, this is the kind of place where you would see on the realty shows where someone goes, I pick finches' beaks off their bodies, and my wife also goes and threads spider crap into tapestry. We have a budget of $2 million, and then they go around looking at houses. This is the place that would happen, and they would go to like houses like these and take a look at them. But yeah, I mean, like, this is a really nice place. I'm blown away.
I guess you just roasted the hell out of Alberto's home place.
No, I'm not. I'm making fun of the realty shows. The ones that they always sit there and they have the people come on with the goofy jobs, and they have like an unbelievable budget for a house. Like I breathe air and my wife collects stardust. We have a budget of $4 million. That's what I'm making fun of. But this place is top notch, really nice. And I gotta say, I thank you for the support, Alberto, and helping this channel to keep on running, and also showing us where you are from in the Lee Spring Army. This place is wild and really nice. Over the top, I'd have to say. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Don't listen to Matthew. He's not telling you the truth. I'm not making fun of your place. This is a very nice place. I'm making fun of the realty shows. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Who Dat Dragon, who says to buy Matt that box of tissues. And thank you for the tissues. Thank you for the donation.
What are you crying about?
The tissues, no, for the sneeze. For the sneeze.
I was maybe like, what are you crying about?
Tissues aren't just for crying.
I mean, true. That's true. But with that, thank you for the support to the tissue fund. I didn't know it was for Matthew sneezing. I thought it was for crying. And he won't stop crying after these streams. But anyways, I'm just kidding. He doesn't cry. He never cried. And with that, we were on to the next one. And thank you. We both never cry. Never. No matter how many times we get bashed, we never cry. Never. And so with that,
I might have cried when I took out my first bot, though. I mean, that was a hell of a moment.
Dude, I might have cried when we call him out. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from, oh my God, man. Sayevs, come on now. We have a $20 super chat from Marion Deemer, who says, stay safe in LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Marion. And we will try and stay as safe as possible. And of course, long live the Release Spring Army. Another thing real quick, I would like to say is that it was a really cool idea. I thought it was really neat that a lot of y'all would love to come to our graduation. But I do hope y'all understand we are trying to stay safe and inviting. Yeah, stay safe. And we're not really like other channels, like prank channels and gaming channels and channels that have fun, that can have their viewer base come around and expect for them to not blow them away. Our viewer base, though, and what we do, it's a little bit more dangerous. I mean, like, the Russian blogger may have been blown up in Russia by a Russian partisan group, but that doesn't mean that the same couldn't happen to us. So we always want to play it very safe. That's why we open up our packages from like 8 feet away with like large tongs, pretty much. But yeah, we always want to stay safe. It's with that. Thank you for the support, Marion. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a $1 super chat from Francine Cannon. And thank you very much, Francine, for the support. And also, I did see your comment earlier about you being a longtime viewer and been watching almost since the beginning. And it's the first time you've actually chatted because they watch on the TV. So very cool to hear. And also very good to have you back in the live chat. And we appreciate that support. And with that being said, we are moving in to our live chat questions. And the first one we have here is our Morse code, of course. And it was solved tonight by JP's RCs. That actually scared me for a minute. JP's RCs, Rumpelstiltskin, C. Fay, Cliff Simonson, Dark Warrior 137, Mark Hodges, and Paul Schultz. They said tonight's Morse code, Russian mod or MOD on fire. All I see is a nice Ukrainian barbecue. BBQ.
Oh my God, it's a jackpot! Quick, steal half the money! Don't let him cash the chips! But anyways, I'm just kidding. Y'all did get it correct. the message was exactly what y'all said. I don't really, usually I'm always at a loss on how to add to my Morse code messages because I wrote them. And I'm like, what am I supposed to add to that? But y'all didn't get it correct. Yeah, that's one thing I can't add is that y'all got that right on the nail. That is the exact message the way it was. And so with that, thank y'all for deciphering the Morse code message. Y'all did get it correct. And I got to thank y'all for doing that for 400 days, 406 days, minus 80. So about like, well, no, not minus 80. It's like minus 60, I think. So really like a whole year at this point, y'all been doing this. And I got to thank y'all for continuously deciphering the Morse code messages. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank y'all for deciphering the Morse code again.
Indeed. And we have another super chat, this time from Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $28 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret. That is very generous of you. And Margaret says, yay. Now I can give you money for your medical bills for foot and mouth disease. What's happening over Easter with the stream? That money is going right back to Trister because he's the only one in the chat that knows how to treat foot and mouth disease, I think. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Or as they say,
I'm just playing. He definitely knows how to treat it.
Oh.
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor. Damn it, Jim. I'm a doctor, not a doctor. Oh, but anyways, I thank you for the support, Margaret. And what's happening over Easter with the stream? That's a good question. I work all out on this thing. I think both of us are working all out on this thing right now that we've never even asked ourselves what will be happening over Easter. Usually we do take breaks for holidays like that, like Christmas. We usually do take breaks. It would be a good chance for us to try and get a little bit of a breather for an extra day before we came back and did it. But at this moment, we haven't really made a decision on that because I haven't even really thought about it. So I'll have to circle back on that one because we don't even really have an answer right now. My honest inclination is to maybe try and use the day off so that way I could try and write this massive essay that has to be written before the semester's over because it's the one I have to write to graduate. It's my capstone. So I might do that. It's not really going to be a holiday for me then. It'll really just be me trying to allocate my time correctly, but I'm sitting here still thinking, I think we will probably. We probably will take that day off, maybe. But that's not definite at this point. Don't like quote me on it because we still haven't made the decision. But with that, thank you for the support, Margaret, and thank you for also supporting our medical bills for the foot and mouth disease. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one, call them out, call them out.
Call them out, call them out.
Yes, call them out, call them out.
We gotta do that a little bit extra now. Yeah.
Anyways, our live chat now goes to Melissa Smith, who says, did you see the new package we're sending to Ukraine? Canada is sending another package too.
I did see the package we're sending. And they said that in relation to which country? The United States or another one?
Let's see. The first one is referring to the one that the U.S. sent, and the second one is Canada's.
I haven't heard about Canada's, actually. I've only heard about America's. That may be because we're largely, even though we try and get international news the best we can, it's still very American-centric here in America. You don't really hear a lot of news of what happens around the world. Ukraine's like one of the few exceptions still. So we haven't heard about the Canadian package, but it is great to know that the Canadians and the British are almost always hand in hand or even ahead of us in giving some of the support that they give. And so with that, thank you for the support. And another thing, Matthew, real quick that I was thinking about, when I said we have to do the call them out extra, is, what's interesting is that the story, not to go into it a lot, but the story he told, he made it sound like we were the ones who did something to him first, but as I recall...
Oh, no.
Wait, no. It's real quick. We'll be moving on. But as I recall, we didn't bring him on the live show for the year anniversary because he blew us off, and then he started to bash our channel after we just, ceased to do anything with him, and that's what started this. If I might be remembering that wrong, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear that's what happened. So kind of weird for him to phrase it that way, but we're not going to push it. We're passive aggressive. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one is another super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $12 donation this time. And thank you very much, Margaret. Quokka sounds like clock with the O. Have a gander on Google Earth at Rottenest Island beaches. When you visit us, we'll take you there.
And let's see here. let me go to that beach. And also, it's apparently Cloaca. I thought it was Quokka. Like, it looks like Quokka. But it may be Cloaca. It is Cloaca. You're from Australia. What the hell do I mean? It may be Cloaca. You are from Australia, so it is Cloaca. Matthew, we got to get that down in our heads. It's Cloaca from here forward, not Quokka, Cloaca. We got to get that right. But let's see here. Rottnest Island. And let's go here. Let's see. Oh, it's like a legit island. I don't know what the hell I was expecting from a place called Rottnest Island, but let's take a look at the pictures. So it looks kind of like Cozumel, Mexico right here. You know that beach, Matthew, where like there were the rocks everywhere? Like it looks like that beach.
It's that shark water.
They get out the water. That's yelling it from the hotel at the guy like 5 yards, well no, like 5 miles away more like. This place is neat. This looks like the area outside of Destin, Matthew. You know that very swampy area near the beach?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This place got a little bit of everything on this island. And this kind of looks like Britain right here, you know, like down in Cornwall.
Yeah, it kind of does, actually. Yeah, I was looking at this water, and I was just thinking the last time we went to the beach, and those sharks were bumping up against us in the water. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. There was,
Yeah.
by the way, that's not a lie. There were legit sharks in the water. They weren't biting anyone, but they would, like brush up against you. We didn't know that until like Matthew looked down and saw one. He's like, "Oh my god, it's a shark!" And we went running out.
Damn shark.
Yeah, it was like one of those little small sharks. I don't know what kind it is, like a reef shark or something. I don't know, but it slid against him, and we freaked out. And we went sprinting out of the water. I mean, who the hell would not freak out?
Get the hell out of that water.
You got a little angry sea puppy swimming around your feet, not biting you yet, but I'm sure if you give it a moment, it will. But this is a beautiful place. To be called Rottnest Island, which sounds so unappealing, yet it's such beautiful, clean water. And you can even see Melbourne in the distance, I think that is. Am I correct? No, Perth. It's Perth. That's what Mike Tyson calls it, Perth. He calls it the Perth. But I like this place a lot. I wish we could take a trip there. But, you know, of course, we have a stream to run. But still, thank you so much for the support, Margaret. And this place is beautiful. And thank you for sharing it with us, because I'll be making sure to put that down on a list of places I want to see in the world before I die. And so with that, I'm not dying anytime soon, by the way. I just want to make that clear. It's just that I want to put that on a bucket list. That's probably a better way to say that. But anyways, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And I see a bunch of folks saying baby shark, so oh no. But anyway.
Baby shark.
Listen, when you're in the water with a shark, a baby shark looks like a big shark all of a sudden. At least to me. Like, shoot him, shoot him. Not really. I think it's illegal, actually. Don't shoot sharks. Yes. Unless you're that guy, then you can shoot him. But anyways, our next live chat question goes to Danny Coco, who says, who is Ukraine's Patton, and will he wisely use the tanks? FYI, Patton was head of Tank Corps in World War I.
And also, I did know that he also beat a guy to death with a shovel in the First World War. Always a lesser known fact about him. He did beat a soldier to death, an American soldier. And then it makes what he did in World War II, slapping the guys in the field hospital in Italy, look like child's play compared to what he did in the First World War. It's straight up killing a man in cold blood, because he was having a PTSD attack, of course, a shell shock attack, more like. But anyways, I don't know of anyone who would specifically be a Patton in Ukraine, because I haven't seen any Ukrainian general who stepped up, who's had a shrill voice. Many of y'all know the George C. Scott impersonation of Patton in the movie Patton, where he talks in a really gravelly voice, and we're gonna use their guts to grease the treads of our tanks. He didn't actually talk like that in real life. Patton actually had a really high-pitched, shrill voice like this, and if you listen to him in the speeches, he sounds exactly like this, and it really is not what you would imagine him to sound like, yet he did. I haven't seen anyone who has a high-pitched voice like that, and is also as aggressive as him, and also is really into armor like him either. It seems a lot of Ukrainian generals really focus on the infantry, and then everything else supports the infantry, which is...
No, we actually knew a kid in high school. Remember that kid with the high-pitched voice that was absolutely insane? That went into the Marines?
No. Dude, whatever happened to that guy, man? Like, I was just, like, once you brought that up, he was always going around, oh no! Like, he sounded like what, Curly from the Three Stooges? he sounded like that. Like, I don't know what was up with that guy, man, but
that dude was insane. But I'll tell you what, he'll be a hell of an asset for the Marines.
Oh,
that guy,
man.
put him in a battlefield, it's going to be mayhem.
Dude, strip your enemies clean of weapons and send that guy out there. He's literally going to just rip them in two. He's just going to grab them and pull them apart.
Yes.
This guy had strength that I could only associate with
Superhuman.
like you know how they say like chimpanzees have like strength that's 4 times stronger than humans, yet they're like half the height. Like he's like that, but human. Like he's got 4 times the strength of the average man. Like I weigh like I think at the time when this happened, I weighed like 210, 220 pounds. Dude picked me up like a sack. Like he just picked me up and just started walking off with me. I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, it was crazy. This guy was nuts. But, you know, hopefully he's having a good time in the Marine Corps because, like, the Marines look for guys like that. I mean, hell, college football teams look for guys like him. He would literally just blow through the defensive line and straight to the quarterback if you gave him a chance. But anyways,
I always stay on that dude's good side. That dude always worried me.
Man, I was scared. I mean, like, no, we weren't scared of the guy because he may possibly, you know, come to school and do something like, you know, you sometimes hear on the news. We're scared of that guy because he might just close the door and lock it and go, "Here's Johnny," and then get you.
Yeah,
so we're like,
he's the guy when he would walk through, everyone would stop talking and just watch him walk through, going, "Hello, guys." Everybody like just staring at him until he walked away and then start talking
man,
again.
dude, it was terrifying, man. And there was no way you could defend yourself because the guy just had so much raw strength. Remember that one time, man, that he walked into that room and, you know, everyone played it off as a joke then. It wasn't really that much of a joke, but what the hell were the teachers even going to do? He came into that room, you know, like the supply room or whatever the hell it was called. And there was that guy in there, you know, the one I'm talking about, the one that starts with an M and ends with like a Z or something. And he just literally grabbed the guy by the belt loop and then his neck and like just tilted him sideways and put him on the floor. And he was trying to play it off as a joke, but what was happening to him was just straight up defilement. I felt so sorry for the guy. And we left the room immediately because there's nothing anyone could do. I mean, the guy's just.
Well, you don't want to be next, so you leave.
You don't want to be next, so we bailed out and left him to be pretty much. And nothing happened to him though. You know, it was like just messing around with him. But that was a really weird way to mess around with someone. I'll tell you that. But yeah, that's some of our kind of crazy stories from school. I'm sorry that took too long to cover. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Slava something once again. Who says the hardest thing to do is admit your enemy is right, especially over here in Eastern Russia. Also, you can give me a nickname if you wish.
And thank you for the support all the way in Eastern Russia. So I'm guessing like, oh, we won't name off the name of your town. You know, there's just some over here. We won't name that off. And also you could be Eastern Russian as in just east of the Urals. That's like East Russia as far as Russia goes. But we will give him a nickname. And we're going to nickname him the Russian. You know, because I think he's the only Russian that watches our show right now, at least that I know of. So from now on, Matthew, we're dubbing him the Russian. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
And up next, we have a question from Carlos Gonzalez, who says, how do you think Finland joining NATO officially will affect the war in Ukraine?
It won't really affect the war in Ukraine per se, because the Finnish have actually been supplying the Ukrainians for a good while. It will affect NATO's overall strategic situation in northern Russia and allow them to render 2 of Russia's naval fleets completely inoperable at the onset of the war, and also besiege St. Petersburg from 2 sides very easily. So it will be helping out NATO strategically, but it really won't affect the war in Ukraine all too much, rather than the Russians are failing at their strategic objectives of trying to stop NATO borders between them, NATO borders from expanding on theirs. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Treborami Williams, who says, how much input do you think the U.S. has in tactics and planning in the up-and-coming Ukrainian counterattack?
Let's see. Can you reread that one again? For some reason, it just didn't click.
How much input do you think the U.S. has in tactics and planning in the up-and-coming Ukrainian counterattack?
Probably a fairly good amount, to be honest. The United States has been helping out the Ukrainian military a whole load with training, doctrine, and so on ever since 2014. So they're probably getting a lot of advisement from the U.S. on what they would suggest for the Ukrainian military to do. Of course, they follow that advisement is one thing or another, but they are probably advising the Ukrainian military nonetheless. And so with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $3 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who says, let's see, coca is said like clock and not cloak. So how do you say it? Clock.
What's up, mother clocka? So I guess it's just clocka. It just does not look like it's spelled that way. It's so weird to say it, but it's clocka, not cloaka. Because I was saying cloaka earlier, so it's clocka. Man, I'm telling you. You know that guy, Matthew, what's his name? He's the Cuban guy from New York City. He's a comedian. I forgot his name. You know, he's the guy who
Gabriel
goes,
something?
"Wake up, cock." You know, oh, I mean, I can't say that, but you know, he says, "Wake up." It's, you know, it's all over. You know, he's that guy. I can't think of his name.
Oh,
though.
Joey Diaz.
Joey Diaz. What's up, mother clocker? But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support, Margaret, and we will make sure to try and say clocka from here forward.
All right, and with that being said, Enforcer, this might be the last question of the night. So would you like to take the honors?
But we ended early last night by 16 minutes. What? Let's do 3 more. Just 3 more. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to In Hansen, who says, does Russia make a distinction between actual Russian territory and claimed Russian territory?
Read that again? Reread the line.
Does Russia make a distinction between actual Russian territory and claimed Russian territory?
I don't think they do. I think they're taking the claimed Russian territory as their territory until they lose it. Although they really don't have a lot of control over it at all. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Noob of the Year, who says, were the radars upgraded on those Polish MiGs?
From what we understand, no. But we may be wrong on that, because they are Polish MiGs that have been in service for quite a while, over 30 years since the breakaway from the Warsaw Pact. So they may have been upgraded with Western tech, but we just don't really know. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one is a super chat from Psyops, who puts in a $5 donation and says, the best general is parts.
Oh, he almost had you. He almost had you. I read that. I was like, oh my God. That was a really smart one. You know what? You know what, Matthew? If you can, read it off, because that was actually a smart one. You know, you're not saying
go right ahead. You're looking at it too.
All right. The best, well, I was going to lead you into the minefield first, but anyways, the best general was Parts. He worked his way up from private. I got to tell you, that guy Parts, he's done a great job in the military, 100%. And I just can't believe that Private Parts is just gotten all the way up to General Parts. Hell, before you know it, it may be Exquisite Parts. Who knows? But even if that's a rank. But anyways, thank you for the support. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who asked the lucky last question of the night?
And the viewer is Matthew Folkemer, who says, Lego, bro! Nice. He says, should the U.S. and allies do something about the current state of the UN Security Council to make it actually legit and not such a joke? If so, what could they do?
Sadly, there's not really a lot they can do, because the Security Council is set up to be as legit as possible. And oddly enough, that allows the Russians to be the leader of it for a month. Don't ever think, though, that the leader of the UN Security Council really holds any power. They all hold equal power, actually. It's just that it's like passing the talking stick from one kid to another. That's really what the leader of the UN Security Council is like. It doesn't really actually hold any real power over anything else. It's just more of like a formal title. Still stupid, though. I understand completely. It's still stupid. They shouldn't have gotten it. But it's just for, I think, like 3 more weeks, and then it moves on to the next country. So it's not like it's going. It won't really change anything on an administrative level, but it is still goofy nonetheless. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all have enjoyed, make sure to hit the like button. We've gotten up to 2,176 likes. Can we get up to 2,300? You know, I'm not asking a lot. I'm just kidding. That's actually a lot. Like, we greatly appreciate anyone who hits the like button. It means a lot to us. And if y'all also want to, y'all can hit the subscribe button as well, because that also helps the Lee Spring Army to continue to grow and spread the word of the Lee Spring Army across the wide internet, and also help us to continue our goal of helping to save Ukrainians' lives through our fundraisers. And of course, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. It's been an absolute pleasure tonight. Good night. Good luck. Take care, stay safe, and of course, Slava Ukraini.
And call them out. Slava Ukraine, Yerum Slava, and good night.
Call them out, make sure to call them out double time.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького